Hello, and welcome to Jason Cabot's Experience. Vlad, thanks for being here today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. The honor is mine. Thank you.
So, Vlad, hopefully it's a softball question. So, you, like most entrepreneurs, do a lot of stuff. You're busy, you're giving okay, a tech, all that kind of stuff. What are you doing to make sure you take care of yourself, right? Either physically, spiritually, mentally, all that kind of stuff, right?
Oh man, you said this was a softball question. You ended up with a big one for me because not a lot of people know this, but I went to a mental facility for, we're going deep from the start. So I went to a mental facility for like I was in and out like for 6 months, but I worked. So what happened was I worked for a week straight with no sleep. And basically I fell off the rail. So now what I do now is I do meditation. That's a big one for me. Making sure I get 9 hours of sleep. That's a huge one for me. And I have my family time, which is big. And then you want to do a little bit of exercise every day. And that's my personal thing. Everybody's got their own formula. And obviously, as I've studied a lot of entrepreneurs. There's no like one right answer. It depends on how you're wired. I'm like wired to work all the time. I have this like need to be valuable in the world because my fear is probably that I'm not valuable enough. And so I optimize around that. So as long as I get my 9 hours of sleep, I meditate, and I journal and whatnot, I'm good.
So, how long did it take you to figure out that 9 hours of your optimal sleep amount? Like, you did a lot of experiments. You like slept 4 hours a couple of weeks and did 12 hours sleep. So how did you come to 9 hours?
Yeah, dude, no, I screwed myself up because when I went with no sleep at all, right? Like I really screwed it up and that's when I fell off the rails and ended up in the facility and all that kind of stuff. So what I figured is, hey, if I shoot for 9, then I'll at least get 8. And most of the time people, it's not like you just, like when I go to bed, right? It's not like I just unplug, like a computer or a cell phone and just turn off, right? What ends up happening is it takes time, or maybe something's bothering me. So then I journal every night as well. So I've got a journal and maybe I got to write about it. Oh, I got the Jason podcast tomorrow. I don't want to mess up. Right? Write it all down. But then after that, I'm good. So I think I think everybody should shoot for 9 because you're not going to get perfect 8.
And I know they say some people like Elon Musk, other people, they sleep 4 or 5 hours. But I don't know. I remember seeing like scientific health studies saying like you sleep 4 hours a day in the long run, it's gonna like cause dementia, like negative brain stuff.
I want to shoot a bullet in the head of that idea people have about not getting enough sleep. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's hilarious, right? I'm sure Elon's haunted, right? Like I've read 2 Elon books, right? And I actually I've met one of the people who was a partner slash co-founder with him, and he's haunted and whatnot. But a lot of entrepreneurs will tell you that it's generally a horrible idea to not get your sleep. It's like if you're a fighter, right? If you're a fighter and you're about to fight, are you going to not get sleep the night before the big fight, right? Like, especially if you're a businessman and in our sport, I consider this shit a sport because I love it so much. Like our sport's constantly changing. You got to be at your best, right? So you got to get sleep.
Yeah. And do you have the same schedule? Like, does 9 hours matter? Like, can you sleep from midnight to 9 in the morning, 8 a.m., like 5 a.m., or you have to have like a set schedule?
Dude, I love it. What's funny is we go to the direction of sleep, but whatever you want to talk about is what I said. So this is great. Yeah, that's sleep is a big part of it, right? By the way, I think people underestimate sleep a lot. Like basically, you're going to sleep for 30% of your life, right? So we're talking about basically a third of people's lives here. I think it's a great topic to talk about. Um, for me, I am not a straight night sleeper. I try. I'll get like 6.5, right? They have something called there's actually a book by Matthew Walker called Why We Sleep, if I'm getting that right. So I encourage people to read. I encourage people to read at least 1 or 2 books about sleep, even. But long story short, I'll sleep for like six hours or whatever. I might get up for like 10 minutes or whatever, right? And then I'll go back to bed and I'll get my full sleep.
Okay. And I think this is what a lot of people miss out on, right? Your mattress and where you sleep matters, right? Like, how
Hmm.
do you make sure you prep yourself to sleep? Like, you have the right pillow, right mattress, because
Hmm.
obviously sleeping on a comfortable bed is way different than sleeping on an air mattress.
When they talk about investing in yourself as an entrepreneur, there's multiple ways to do it. One of the things I've been really interested in recently is Alex Hormozy actually coined this, right? Which is the S and instead of the S&P 500 for stocks, it's the S and Me 500, like what yourself. And I think before coaches and courses and all that, one of the easiest things you can do is make sure that you invest in a great sleeping situation. So sleep is part of investing in yourself, I think, as an entrepreneur.
And so I didn't know this. Like, so you can self admit yourself to mental. places?
That was not, no, I was completely out of it, man. I was,
Okay.
so, okay, I'll give you more background for that one. So I was training MMA. I was trying to run a marathon and I failed, by the way. I failed at all this shit. And this was year 2 of my company. So my company's been around for 8 years, Logic Inbound. This one, right? This is my third. But basically, I was trying to do $1 million bootstrapped my second year in business. And I was young, and dumb as I still am today. But basically, I said, okay, I'm in year 2. I'm just gonna. In fact, I have a mentee, and he said, if I don't make $1 million this year, I'm gonna jump off a cliff. Right? Like he's so, it's like that number that for some reason people mythologize it.
Mhm.
So I put a lot of pressure on that, and I had a ex at the time who she went to sleep at 3 a.m. every night, which was horrible too. So you mix all these things together, and I read a book called Living with the Seal by Jesse Itzler, I think his last name is. And he said that the SEALs, they have something called a crucible, right? And
Yeah.
you actually you served in
Yeah.
the army, and I respect you for your service to the country. But basically, thank you. And the SEALs or whatever, I think if I'm getting it right, they don't sleep for like 2 or 3 days. And I
Yeah.
was like, if they could do it,
Yeah.
why can't I? I'm training for a marathon. I'm doing MMA training, and I got this,
Yeah.
this company, and it just broke me. I broke
Yeah.
myself.
You definitely sleep. I can remember the second time to Afghanistan, when we first got there, something really bad happened. And so like there was a 7-day period, like we got no sleep, right? I mean, we cat naps and stuff, right? Like maybe 20-minute naps. But you can definitely tell that as you fall, you get all that sleep. It's like you're like a zombie trying to operate.
So,
You definitely sleep.
you're actually probably a great guy to talk about this, right? Because you're obviously a business guy, but also you've actually served in during wartime,
Mhm.
right? And there's peacetime in business and there's wartime.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask you,
Okay.
uh, you know, if you're in wartime in a business, right? There's a crisis, right? How do they handle sleep in the military?
I mean, I hate to use the term suck it up, buttercup, but a lot of times it's that, right? I mean, sometimes you got like, you got a man or woman up, like you just got to go through it, right? And of course, before you get training, like before you go to war, you go to like things like NTC. So NTC is a training exercise. It's 30 days long. You get to Mojave Desert, California. The first week's kind of prep time, but you're there for 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks like 24/7, right?
Hmm.
Like you might be there and you might have to do a movement operation, move all your stuff from one operation, another operation. When you get there, they throw CS gas on you and then they say move again, right? It's always like, and of course the people who are like the trainers, they do it like all year round, right? So and everything, right? You're a brand new unit. So this is basically, I mean, and of course sometimes you gotta have the drive motivation, right? You gotta like, and the big thing is like you don't want to let your people down, right? Like, man, I'm really tired, but if I go to sleep, I'm gonna fuck somebody over, right? So that's
Hmm.
a lot of it too.
Interesting. That makes a ton of sense, right? And obviously you're actually in real wartime,
Yeah.
right? But in business, I would say that, even if you think you're going to lose your company or whatever, right? Since our performance is less physical, right? It's more mental and decision making, right? That's where it's I would say, hey, you don't need to suck it up, go take a nap, buttercup,
Yeah.
right?
Also, too, like if you all see the army, somebody might die, right?
Exactly.
No one's dying. No matter how important you think a startup is, no one's dying, right?
So that's the fun part, right? Because lack of sleep, right? One piece of that is stress, right? And what's interesting is people still, even though no one's dying, right? I'm from Armenia, and it's like it's an up and coming country, right? It's not America, which I'm very blessed that I'm a citizen of this awesome country, being an immigrant. Like for some reason, right? Even being an immigrant and being thankful, right? It's still interesting to you have to remind yourself that hey, you're not. It's nothing's really on the line. Like look at us, we're in like a fluffy world.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Definitely. And then do you still do MMA?
So it's interesting is I'm actually one of my friends, Albert, actually was I just a couple weeks ago I went to his MMA match, but basically not today, unfortunately. The short answer is no. The long answer is I plan to get back into it. Actually, I have a hernia. I had a herniated disc. So after I ran the marathon, I then said, okay, let me start doing weightlifting again. So I was doing MMA, then I did a marathon, then weightlifting, and then I got a herniated disc. So that took me out, and I was kind of been kind of lazy for the last 4 or 5 years, and now I'm thinking, hey, I need to get back into it.
And you said earlier that you immigrated at 6 years old.
Yeah, with my family. Yeah.
Okay. Like, is it your mother and father, like your whole family came or?
Yeah, my mother, my father, my sister,
Okay.
we all came over, and it was a very beautiful experience, I would say. A
And
lot of lessons.
y'all came to the Seattle area or somewhere else?
Seattle, yeah, sunny Seattle is what I call
Okay.
it. And we came over. I remember having to learn English, and I think what's interesting is I'm sure everybody feels different. Everybody feels special, and I kind of that's my story. I tell myself like, hey, you're an outsider, you're an immigrant, you got to prove yourself, right? I'm sure that kind of went into you know following my path.
You have to know any? Do you have any idea why your parents picked Seattle?
We did have a family member that lived here.
Okay.
You know, my aunt and uncle, my great aunt and great uncle. You know, so they were already here. And then the way we got here actually is we just won the green card lottery back then
Yeah.
when things were a bit more open. Actually,
Yeah. And people don't realize it is a lottery, right? Because like
yeah.
they have like I think every year I make this number up for the H1B1 visa. I think they have like 2,000. I make this number have 2,000 slots, but like 25,000 applications, and there's like this luck of the draw. I
So
think.
the 2,000 slots, 25,000 applications or whatever, that's like back in the 90s when I came over.
Okay.
Today, I don't know. I don't know what the real numbers are, but I think it's much harder.
Much
Much
higher.
harder. Yeah.
It probably is. So let
Yeah.
me ask you this. This is my point of view. It's like when immigrants come here, the more entrepreneurial, the more driven. It's like they come here. At least every immigrant I know or immigrant, and they're like they have a drive. Like shit, I'm in America. Like I got to take this opportunity. Where like quote unquote Americans like me were like, yeah, I'm good. Yeah, and that's not my thing. Where like, yeah,
You know, I think it's interesting, right? Because it's kind of like the mythology of the country. It kind of gets you, at least your family, right? And then, but you know, we came from so Armenia was part of the Soviet Union, you know, for Soviet Russia. So for somebody like my mom, right, it was like back then culturally, like in the '90s, from where we were living, right, when we were in Russia, we went from Armenia to we fled. You know, there's a whole genocide thing, right, and then went to Russia, and then we came to America. But for her, even working was not allowed for women, right? So she was like, wow, I can actually create value in the system. And then, you know, in the 90s, it's like you can get a job, that job, you can use that to pay yourself through school, you know, pay your way through whatever you need. So that's like crazy, right? It's a crazy opportunity that people take for granted. And then for me, when I was getting raised, they said, you can't do this. You know, we brought you here to be better. It's like you're being born twice. It's like your parents saying, hey, you know, you were born to, you know, to be the best you can be, but also you were born and we flew you over to this country to be the best you can be. And you're representing for the whole family. And it's a whole thing, you know?
so was a lot of pressure on you to succeed. You
Oh,
think?
yeah. Yeah. Cause I graduated, you know, humble brag, I guess, over here, definitely bragging, but I graduated college 2 years early.
Okay.
Right. But the thing is, there were moments in my life when I didn't want to do things. And then I would go to my dad or my mom. My dad was kind of in the family. He was like, don't make me he was like you know, the horror that you don't want to see as a kid. At least as a kid. Today I love him. He's very open, right? But when I was a kid, she was like, don't make me talk to your dad about this.
Uh-huh.
Right. And it's like, well, what's the punishment going to be? I don't even know where he is right now. You know, he could be up in the trees watching us, you know. So my mom would really motivate us, you know, and when I was like, hey, I don't want to graduate college 2 years early, I was like, I want to graduate a year early. She said, I don't care, go suck it up and figure it out.
Yeah.
And that actually made me do that, you know.
So you might not remember this, but you got your 6 years old. You remember any culture shocks coming to America? Like, man, this food is different, or like these
Dude,
people are different. Like, how
a
talk
hundred
about that?
percent. The food, it's interesting, right? The food, the first time I remember eating McDonald's, you know, because we're talking about health here, is I threw up actually the first time I ate McDonald's. Because over there it was much healthier. You know, and I don't know how McDonald's is today, you know, internationally. I think I actually went to like the UK and it was fairly similar. But back then it was kind of different, the McDonald's in Russia and whatnot. And I ate it and I threw up because it was super greasy. And then, you know, quickly my system adapted to the food. And then culturally, you know, obviously in some places, you know, and religions and people and whatnot, right? Armenians are Christian, but they're very kind of conservative Christian. So it was, you know, things like, you know, swearing or elders, respect for your elders is a big one, right? You know, you know,
No matter what they do or do right or wrong, you got to respect your elders no matter what.
yeah. And the thing is, you know, when you're an immigrant, right, that's like goes double, like everything kind of goes double, right? Like getting good grades, that goes double, right? And a B is kind of like not good enough, right? A C is you're basically an F, right? And an A is that's normal, right? And then you've got to respect your parents. You should never talk back to your parents, right? There's no teenage, you know, like over here we have like this teenage phase you go
Yeah,
through. Over there's no teenage
yeah.
phase, you know. So yeah, it's that's a lot of the culture shock, I think, is the disciplinary side of it.
So is the language Armenian, like Armenian?
Correct.
Can
Yeah.
you can you still speak that?
No,
No.
unfortunately, I cannot. I actually joke with people. I say, you know, my name is Vlad, so that's why I can speak Russian.
No.
So, and frankly, you know, it's kind of crude to say, but I'm always very honest. It's my strength and weakness. If I had to pick, I'd rather pick, you know, Russian
Okay.
versus Armenian, right?
I
Because
mean,
more
yeah. I
people
mean, like,
speak it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and then if I had to pick again, if I had to switch, I'd pick Mandarin, right? Like
yeah.
like whatever the first number one language, obviously English in the world, and then it's like whatever the second is, you should speak the second. It's just from a value perspective. I
Yeah.
think I got lucky.
So do your parents ever like get on you like, man, you lost a mother tongue? What's wrong with you?
No, no, no. The mother tongue over there was Russian. And so my
Okay.
grandparents would always say, hey, don't lose Russian,
Okay.
you know, and so
So do you
I'm
still speak
lucky.
Russian?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I speak Russian.
And do you have any kids?
No,
Okay.
so I'm actually gonna fly in May to meet my girlfriend's parents.
Okay.
And you know, now that I'm, you know, 33, starting to get ready for that life. So I
Yeah.
want, you know, it's one of my favorite jokes is she wants I want 3 kids, she wants 2 kids, and my dad said we should compromise and get 5. You know, that's his thing. But yeah,
That sounds
I'm
like a
plan.
thing a future granddad would say.
Yeah, yeah.
So do you think you're gonna like teach your kids whatever? I mean, you have like to speak like Russian and Armenian, whatever your future wife's languages.
Yeah, so my sister, she has 3 kids, and basically, you know, English, Russian, and her husband speaks Spanish as well fluently. So
Yep.
they're learning English, Russian, Spanish, and now I got Duolingo on my phone. Actually, I think when I was speaking at one of your events, I was speaking Spanish to one of the people
Yeah.
there because I was learning
Yeah.
how to speak Spanish for my nieces.
Yeah. So Armenia, I might remember wrong, but then it was like way back in the day, I think where like Turkey did a massacre of Armenian people.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
talk about anything about that? Like, did that come up as part of your upbringing? Like, fuck Turkey, they're the demons and devils, all that
You
kind of
know,
shit.
I appreciate you saying that, right? From perspective, that's a great question. I personally don't hate the Turkish
Mhm.
people, right? Because it's kind of like if like flip it from an American perspective, right? If somebody's in Afghanistan,
Yeah.
right? Not that they could argue there's a genocide there as well,
Yeah.
right? Or like if you're in the whole Palestine Israel situation there as well, right? Like you think the people really make the decisions, right? Did I make
Yeah.
the decisions, right?
No.
Did they make? No, it's the
No.
government. The government
Yeah.
makes the decision, right? There's one person, and there's there's a lot of different factors involved, right? Religion was one of them, right? Because there's a Christian country surrounded like by Muslim countries, right? I'm sure there's territory situations, resources, basically, right? So it's like I'm not. Why would I hate somebody for
Yeah.
that, right? And then but yeah, you'll still see people bickering and fighting online, and I was like, look, I don't have time for it.
And Armenia, I'm guessing Armenia and Turkey are like right next to each other.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
do people like still go back and forth to the two countries, or is pretty much, or is it like North and South
Oh,
Korea where like don't?
no, no, they still had. So there was a thing in Artsakh recently, which was a couple years ago, and still going on today. And it's a small region where it was traditionally, the Armenian people lived there, right? It was literally like the Ukraine situation,
Mhm.
right? Where there's like a small piece of land, right? And Armenians are like, okay, we've always lived here. This is our land, et cetera, right? And then out of nowhere, right? The Azerbaijan is the other country that was part of the genocide,
Mhm.
right? Is because Azerbaijan used to be a part of Turkey, and then they kind of broke away, even
Yeah.
though they're really strong allies.
Mhm.
Long story short, right? Like they said, "Oh no, this is our piece of land," and then Turkey came in, and then now in the whole region, there's just a horrible migration that the people had take place. There was war. My uncle actually died in the war. That was a couple years ago between Artsakh and really you could say Turkey really is behind
Okay.
everything. And yeah, so there's definitely it says North South Korea.
Okay. And one thing I don't understand, like I don't know, I might be making this up, but I know for the longest time you had all these UN resolutions, all this countries saying, "Hey, this was a genocide that happened," and Turkey was like, "No, it didn't." They were like,
Yeah.
"Turkey had happened. Just admit to it." Turkey was
Yeah.
like, "No, it didn't."
They can't admit to it, right? Because strategically for them, if they admit to it, then that means they have to have restitution, they
Mhm.
have to give up resources,
Okay.
right? Everything's over resources,
Yeah.
right? Like, like they'd have to do some shit that the same stuff that Germany had to do,
Yeah.
right? So like same thing with Russia, right? Russia's not going to say, that they did anything wrong. Like,
No,
yeah.
not. And it probably complicates a lot since Turkey is a member of NATO. One of our quote unquote allies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's crazy, like they're allies, but like people don't remember this during the Iraq one. Oh, I think one of the Iraq wars, Turkey didn't let us use they didn't let us use our military bases. And like, what type of fucking partner are you? Our shit's there. We're spending money there, right? Are you going to say no?
What's interesting is right because you're bringing up these political discussions, which I love. It goes back to business, right?
Mhm.
Business, like, cause imagine, like even though I know, my sister argues that politics is more complicated than business. To me, it's all business, right? Like there's a quote by Elon, and he says the government is really just a big business, except they have a monopoly on war, right? That's his quote. And basically, that's kind of it's just resource
Mhm.
exchange, right? So it's like you've got one entity here, right, and they want resources, right? And then you have another entity, and then they're just kind of trading, and then
Yeah.
that's really ultimately it's like who gets the most resources for the most supremacy and the better position.
When's the last time you've been back to your home country?
Never,
Never since you were
yeah,
6. No,
yeah.
no desire to go back and visit
I
and see the old family, whatever you want to call it.
Well, I did actually before the whole Artsakh thing
Mhm.
happened, right? And then a couple of years ago, right? When that started happening, I was like, man, even going back there, you might have to serve in the army. You know,
Well, that's a big reason not to go.
they might not recognize you. You know, you could show your passport. I'm sure it would be fine, but I'd have to try really hard to
Mhm.
basically like make sure that things were cool. I'm sure that it's safe and whatnot, but it would just be, you know, difficult. I've been to other countries, right? I've been to the UK, I've been to France, I've been to Scotland. Went to Peru actually earlier last year. So you know, I've still got other countries on the list, but eventually I do want to go back to Armenia, and even eventually I want to go back to Russia. I have family in Russia.
Yeah. Okay.
What about you?
So I'm from Texas. My great grandfather immigrated from Italy.
Mm.
And so funny thing, I just did like one of those ancestry things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought I was at least 25% Italian, right? It comes
Mm-hmm.
out I'm only 9% Italian, 33% Irish. But I'm like, how am I only 9%? Because my grandfather was 100% Italian. He married someone, which cuts down to 50%, and then my mother's 25%. But it says 9% all the way to 35%. So who knows, right?
Yeah, nobody really knows. You know, it's one of those things. You know, it comes back to business and marketing. I think, you know, they do a really. I think the mystery of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you think a look of mystery, like, you know, what are you really? We'll tell
Yeah.
you. You don't know. It's the question mark is what really kind of lures people in. And so I did one of those answers to things, and surprise, surprise, they said you're 99.9% Armenian. I was like, thank you for the.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was
Damn.
like, thanks a lot. Yeah, I guess I'm as pure could be.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, this doesn't really tell me anything new, right?
Yeah.
But, I actually went to Italy last year as
Okay.
well. So
What part of Italy you go to?
so I went to Rome,
Okay.
but then we went to Florence, and we just kinda went all over Italy.
Yeah. Florence is such a great fucking city.
Yeah.
Because I was stationed there for 2 years in Vicenza, Italy. So we went all over the place. Italy's such a great place.
So let me ask you this, right? So it's interesting, right? Because internationally, there's different businesses, and you see different, like, cultures,
Mhm.
right? For instance, I know that, you know, for instance, in Africa, their whole, like, business is mobile,
Um,
right? How have and you've probably traveled around. How have you seen different, you know, businesses, you know, prosper in those countries, and what kind of ideas have you taken to the US with you?
Yeah. For example, I spent some time in Germany. In Germany, it's all like, hardcore. We got to get it done, like business, where in Italy is more like, they're not missing siesta for nothing, right? Like they're going to eat their dinner, they're going to eat their wine, they're going to have to spend time with their friends. Like, I could like work an extra hour and close a bigger deal, but I'm not going to miss this time with my friends, right?
That's so interesting, right? Because it goes back to culture, which we talked about, right? And you know, lack of sleep in Japan, for instance. I've heard that they just work nonstop,
Mhm,
right? And you know, I forgot what the term is, but there's a term of like working too hard and making
mhm.
yourself go suicide or something crazy like that, right? So I think that that's so interesting how the culture will create the economic resources for the country, right? And I actually, when I went to Italy last year, I thought to myself, kind of, I was like, this feels like a country you go to when you retire.
Yeah, exactly.
And I
Yeah.
was like, I never want to retire. I was like, I'm never.
Yeah. Like you might do a business and you might have like, you might go there, hey, I want to spend $25,000. We open them back up and, tomorrow, right?
Yeah,
And we're
yeah.
in Germany, like, okay, we'll stay open for you, right? Or
Yeah.
United States, there, okay, we'll stay open for you, right?
Yeah, I think that's, you know, and on
And there's
the
nothing wrong with that, right? I mean,
no, there isn't, and that's the thing, right? I used to be judgmental. When I was younger, Vlad, I'd be like, "Those guys are weak," you know? You know, I wanna be hardcore. You know, there's actually a term that I love of Bill Gates called, he was monomaniacal was one of his favorite words, right? And then his other favorite, words is like hardcore, right? And so people he'd really focus, you know, go all in. I think you need that to succeed because I think in business, right, there's such a slight edge, a slight advantage, right? You need to and those compound over time, right? So I think you need to do that. However, there's nothing wrong with slowing it
yeah,
down. You know, there's nothing wrong with taking care of yourself. You know, I think that can have its own advantages. And I think it matters in terms of what type of business. That's more of like a lifestyle business. And there's nothing wrong with being a lifestyle business owner. People love lifestyle. I have a lifestyle business, right? Or at least I did until now we're making a pivot to, you know, speed things up. So yeah.
in Florence, did you go to the flea market there?
No, I did not. Have you been there?
Yeah, it's like insane. Like it's like talk about entrepreneur, right? They like hassle, deal with you. It's really good experience.
I love that.
Yeah.
I've never been to a flea market. In Russia they have something called the bazaar,
Mhm.
right? And in Peru, actually, I went to the market there last year, and I guess last year I didn't even think about this. I went to Italy and Peru, but basically, didn't know those would come in handy today. But basically, I actually remember getting little keychains, and I negotiated in Spanish, in horrible broken Spanish, with a Peruvian merchant
Yeah.
and vendor. And it was wonderful. And because I told my girlfriend ahead of time, I was like, my goal is to get some kind of discount from somebody over here. Because then, yeah, you know, I don't only have negotiation experience in English. Imagine negotiating in a broken language.
Yeah, exactly. And were you able to see like any of the artwork and like museums and stuff?
Oh yeah,
It's so beautiful. Like,
yeah, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous place. It reminded me of the Louvre
yeah,
in France,
yeah.
which if anybody is interested in art or anything like that, if checking out the Louvre in France is phenomenal. We went to the Sistine
Mhm.
Chapel. It was wonderful, the whole experience.
It was a good experience. The wine is good. The food's good. It's like, so here's a story for us stationed in Italy, right? This is an example of how you never find a bad meal. So this friend of us told us, hey, Jason, y'all need to go to this place. It's called Gazzo's Pizza. It's like an hour drive from our house, right?
Hmm.
And they said, go there, like this, it's really good food. But I'll give you a warning, you're gonna get there, you're not gonna want to eat, right? So we got there. The line was an hour long. It's 95 degrees. There's flies everywhere. It's hot as shit. Like, no, we said we're gonna go. We sat down, freaking best pizza ever, right? It was so good.
It is delicious. And I remember one time I said I want pepperoni on my pizza, and they like confused the word. You laughing,
Yeah.
Yeah. So they did not put the pepperoni on there.
No. Do you have any hobbies right now that you're doing?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Like I understand my type. Like I'm more of a hardcore type entrepreneur, right? There's great entrepreneurs like, the Tim Ferriss style. And they'll do the 4-hour work week and they can be very effective, right? But like I am from the cloth of and my mentor, one of my mentors actually, Victor Huang, amazing entrepreneur here. He talks about how you should focus on 40 hours. Jason Fried talks about how you shouldn't, if you're being a weekend warrior, so to speak, right? Then that means you're being wasteful.
Yeah.
So I try to make sure I'm not wasteful. So my hobby is a stupid answer, but it's a startup project. I feel like it's a cheap answer, right?
Okay.
Because but me and my cousin, what we do is because we love startups, we love business. So we work on our business. And then now what we're doing is we're building tools. So like we just built brainylion.com. You can check that out. But basically it's like an AI for conversion rate optimization. It uses AI vision to actually optimize a website and tell you kind of what you're missing and what you need is specifically tailored for fire, water damage restoration companies because we're building software there. So that's my hobby is my work. And that's the thing, right? Like the answer, everybody wants to retire and all that, right? And then their best answer is like, oh, well, what are you gonna do when you retire? I'm gonna do nothing. Well, doing nothing is
You're gonna die quickly. It's
yeah,
proven. It's proven. You're gonna die quickly.
yeah, exactly. So you're gonna die quickly, right? It's gonna be boring. So I think first of all, build all the skills you need, right? And then after you get to a good level, start focusing on the things you're really more and more passionate about. And so I feel like I get to freaking do this for a living, right? I get to go talk to awesome business owners. I get to take them out to eat and use the company card. The company pays for everything. I know I own a piece of it, but still, right? Like it's great. Like I get to do that. I get to have a shit ton of fun and I get to pay my my dues and get to the next level.
So how you do this? This is one thing I think a lot of startup founders, just people in charge do wrong, right? They're like, I'm a go getter. I'm working 80 hours a week. My people better work 8 hours a week, right? But people work differently, right? Some people work better from home. Some people work, and so I think so many people in charge get that wrong, right? Oh, you're not doing this, but like I'm doing, like I just drives me crazy.
I think one of the best traits of a great leader is you're able to actually go ahead and find the strengths of your team and let them play to that, right? I think that's like one of the pieces of leadership. You're able to unify everybody and help them focus on their strengths, right? And the other thing is, in terms of 80-hour weeks or whatever, I don't think you can expect as much from people who have less equity, right?
That drives me crazy. You see all the time, like you see it on Core or Reddit or different places. My employees are not investors in me. Do they have like equal amount of you have in the company? No, then no the fuck up. Like, are you kidding me? Right?
Yeah, no, 100%. You know what's interesting is also I was talking to my mentor about this, which is, he literally just told me yesterday, and I said, "Hey, what do you think about hiring superstars?" Right? Like I was like, I'm trying to have these superstars, right? I was like, the PayPal mafia, and he actually flipped it, and I never thought about it this way, and I wish I would have earlier, right? Or I'm sure a lot of my mentors were repeating their advice, and now I'm finally catching on. But he said, Vlad, don't try to hire superstars that'll work 100 hours a week, whatever, because most of the time if these people are super duper hungry, either A, they already have their own company,
Yeah.
right? Or B, will work for you for maybe 6 months or a year, and then they'll go get their own company or
Yeah.
whatever, right? So he said, instead, create a business so simple that a moron can do the job. There's actually a Warren Buffett quote that I like. He says, "Create a business. I like to invest in companies so cheap that an idiot can run it because eventually one will." Right? So
That's pretty true. And yeah,
but that's the thing, right? In business, think about all you have to get done from sales to operations, hiring, and then simplify it to the point that anybody can run it. And if it takes one person to do something, right? maybe, and they're not succeeding, right? Maybe that role needs to be split up, right? So that's the interesting thing also in business, right? It's like sometimes you have to hire the same person for the same role over and over until you figure, like dating, like until you figure out how to get it right. Or sometimes, right, if you're hiring multiple times for a role, it might be too complex and you have to simplify and streamline. And that's the best businesses are the simplest ones.
So how do you prioritize your stuff every day? Like you go like on Monday, today's I'm focused on sales, Tuesday I'm focused on marketing, or is like, are you just like, I want to say that I'm pretty don't wing it, or do you like do another schedule? How do you work that?
Great question. So basically for business, right, it all depends on whatever your goals are, right? So you want to have like some kind of 5-year vision. And it's not like your hands are cuffed, but it's good to have a 5-year vision. Then based on that, you create like a 3 and then a 1-year vision. Then based on the 1-year vision, you can have, quarterly goals, and then you can have weekly goals. And there's different philosophies how to focus. I've actually, like I said, I don't know if you know this, but I listen to an audiobook a week. And I've done that for the last 3 years, right? So I've definitely studied all these different entrepreneurs. So Jason Fried, what he would say in his philosophy is he would say, just go like week to week, have, just no more than a month out, right? And then other entrepreneurs, would say that, hey, you need a really good, like, there's a guy named Barry in Score here locally, and he told me, he said, you need to have a 5-year vision. Otherwise, you don't know where you're going. So I think it's good to have both. And I think the most important part is you keep track of metrics. And then as the CEO, it depends on what your role is, right? But as CEO in the company, right, your role is to make sure everybody succeeds in the company. And most importantly, number one, the company or the vision and the mission come to life, right? And then in terms of individual roles, you guys need to look at your own metrics. Like, what is your KPI, right? If you're a sales guy, right, your whole focus should be sales, right? Marketing is generating leads, right? Ops is, delivery.
So next move to networking, right? So I know you're a big networker. Talk
Hmm.
about like, I think a lot of people were like, I think we go through your network, you're supposed to add value, right? A lot
Hmm.
of people network that'll get something out of it. Another thing I think a lot of people do, they network too much, right? Or not enough, right? So
Hmm.
talk about getting the balance, like building your company and networking, because it's only 24 hours a day, right?
Yeah. So what's interesting is the CEO and the company who's talking about roles, they will usually they'll network a lot because there's a local the one of the founders of OfferUp, actually a local startup here, right? He said you have to spend 50. He spends 50% of his time networking because of hiring, right? So a lot of times that role makes sense for
And the
networking.
people don't realize that, right? People think network is like, raise money or sales. It's really, like you said, hiring people, because you need to have a talent bench, right? Like I might work for you doing, sales. I tell you 2 weeks later, I'm quitting. You should already have like 3 or 4 people. Hey, I have a sales opening.
Yeah. So when it comes to networking, my number one philosophy behind it that I think everybody should think about it this way is people can either solve your problem completely for you or make it much easier to solve. Right. And if you go into networking with that thesis of people can solve your problem for you or make it much easier to solve, then you're like, wow. So you're saying like I'm surrounded by like business genie. Like one of my favorite questions is, well, if I was a business genie, what could I do to solve your problem? So you're surrounded by these business genies that could really help you gain as much leverage as you can. And so in terms of networking too much, right? The question is like, do you know everything you need to do? Do you have all the key advisors? One thing a lot of business owners don't do that I also think they need to do before they even really go into the company is you should create a list of advisors to help your vision come true because they're going to be your levers, your leverage point, right? So for me, networking is just a way to gain resources, trade value with people.
Let me ask you this. So in Seattle, you could easily go something networking every day, right?
Hmm.
But, is it the networking thing for you? Like, suppose you like you're a marketing person.
Hmm.
Do you really need to go to like a I don't know, a pharmaceutical science
Yeah.
thing? Like,
Yeah.
so how do you determine that? What how do you determine what's good for you to go to?
That's a great question. One of my favorite books, actually, and this also has to do with networking, is by Adam Grant. It's called Give and Take. Highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite books. And he talks about whenever you're in business, there's 3 types of people. There's matchers, there's takers, and there's givers, right? And I'm going to ask you a question. From matchers, takers, and givers, who do you think is the highest performers?
I hope it's givers.
Who do you think is the worst performers?
I want to say takers.
Actually, you're wrong.
Is it?
So
Okay.
the best performers are givers, but then he actually also says the worst performers are also givers.
Okay.
And so what's interesting is he says that the best networkers, right, and the highest performing people, they're givers at the top, right, but also at the bottom. So let's start with the bottom. They're the worst at the bottom because they get burnt out. Everybody's using them all the time, right? I'm sure a person, Jason, who's very kind, right, that's constantly getting used by other
Yeah.
people, right? And they're maybe talented, but they just get burnt out a lot. right? And then they're the best at the top because they figured out how to help people, but also in a way that helps them.
Yeah.
And also, they might just help people to help people. Like I do that all the freaking time, right? However, they also make sure people don't burn them. So what they do is they start off as matchers, right? And then they make sure that nobody burns their time because a lot of scam artists, right? I've been scammed before as well. But basically, a lot of scam artists, right? They're not going to take the time to actually play a really super long con, right? Instead, they'll say, like, oh, well, is this person going to keep, can I take from them? No, I can't. Scammers are obviously takers, a lot of them, right? And then so the givers, the top performing givers will only give to other givers or matchers.
Okay.
And then they'll level up and they'll gain tons of leverage, which is what I've been able to do in my life.
Yeah, I remember seeing a meme. It basically saying, if you're a giver, limit your giving. So the people who take have no limits what they're going to take from you.
Yeah, I personally say you should give. So there's something called the 5-minute favors in that book, right? So I don't want to plug that book too much. It's a good book though. Like I said, I really like it. But he says, the best givers learn to give in a way that isn't draining to them, right? Where ideally you get energized, right? And so that's a big part of it. And then also, right, you can do smaller favors. You don't have to spend an hour, right? Like you can spend 5 minutes doing something, right? Or maybe liking somebody's LinkedIn post. That's still giving. And you can think of ways to leverage people. But basically what you got to do is you got to filter people and see, are they willing to at least give back and match with you? Or are they willing to give back more? Because that's the best relationship where you have two givers and you're constantly thinking of like, how do I add value?
A competition.
It's the best competition you can ever have. My shout out to my peer group, my friends, right? Every Saturday we have a mastermind group, but we're constantly giving back and forth to one another. So
let me ask you this. Let's suppose like you've given like, it's not the major, like just small, maybe you made a connection, you did a favor or whatever, you did like 5, 6 times, right? And the person never gave anything back to you. And then you ask this person, hey, maybe I see you connect with John Brown. Can you do introduction? Something like your mind's really minor. Either they ghost you or they say no. Like you keep on giving, or you're like, no, you're like,
oh yeah, no, you're way too nice.
Are you petty as fuck? Like fuck this motherfucker.
I don't think fuck this motherfucker, but I have been there, by the way. Like I said, I have.
So them is like 3 times, 4 times.
I'll maybe make one connection, maybe if I think so. You have to start off as a matcher. You can't let anybody. And now everybody's gonna look at me as a giver, but I like that, right? That's good too. But a lot of the worst takers, by the way, like the CEO. So in the book, the CEO of Enron, right? Or who's that guy that just went to jail for Sam
Bankman-Fried.
Samuel Bankman-Fried, right? Like he pretended to be a giver, right? He's always talking about giving back. He's always talking about how he's an ultimate altruist or whatever the heck his philosophy is, right? But the truth is, right, he was just a taker masqueraded as a giver. So some of the biggest scam artists, right, they pretend to be the kindest, right? So what you should do though, if you're really a giver, is you should be a matcher in the beginning, right? And then you say, oh, Vlad, can you connect me to like a client? I'd say, sounds good. Can you like this LinkedIn post? And then maybe also, do you have a vendor that you can introduce me to?
Yeah.
Right. And then if you're not introducing me to that vendor or liking that LinkedIn post, I'm not gonna give you a client, right? Or I give you a client, right? Which is just one connection. I say, hey, can you give me a kickback? Right. And I told this to one of my friends actually recently in my circle. I said, hey, here's a referral. He was like, thank you so much. I was like, great. I was like, and pay me when you can. Yeah. I was like, just pay me back for it or, whatever way. And I was like, and I told him, I said, and I'm sure that when you do figure out a viable model, because he's like, oh, I don't have a model. I'm like, well, when you do, I'll have plenty more referrals for you, right? So I'm sure you're going to want them, right? And if they don't give them, whatever.
So speaking of corruption, do you see what just happened in Vietnam?
No, man, I am not as political as you, so tell me, go ahead.
So Vietnam is very corrupt, right? And so this lady, she's like the real estate agent. Basically, she defrauded the Vietnam government out of 3% of the GDP. And she was sentenced to death.
Wow.
Yeah. Sentenced to death. Yeah.
That, that's an interesting thing, right? Because now we're getting into another thing is, politics. I'm going to steer us towards motivation because I think that's an interesting one. Do you think huge like punishments like that, right, actually change people? And this is incentivization. And if you're in a business, incentivization is everything. If you're trying to build a community, right? So how do you think?
I think in Vietnam, it's so corrupt over there, they had to do something right. I mean, like here in the United States, if they sentenced that dude, Sam, what his name is, a death. We've been uproar, right? Like this is America. What are you doing, right? But Vietnam is like the corruption is like, I think it's Vietnam, Afghanistan, Somalia, and other countries, like the top 5 corrupt countries of the world, right?
Yeah. They say drastic times require drastic action.
And maybe no one like this lady. Who knows, right?
Yeah, that's so funny. She didn't have any friends. Yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried, I know he made some political contributions as well. And as you know, a lot of politicians are corrupt on both sides, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think he's going to be getting the death penalty anytime soon.
No. So do you still run your networking events, your meetups and stuff?
So the last time I did a serious networking event, so this is a fun story, right? The last time I did a serious networking event was actually in 2020, February 2020.
Okay.
And if you would have met me back then, I think you've been to my events as well,
Yeah.
which I really appreciate. Thank you so much, Jason. Right. And they're always for free, by the way, because genuinely they're to give, right? They're to help the community. I got nothing out of those events. Besides, I had great connections, right? I got those, right, which is invaluable, but I never charged for anything,
Yeah.
right? But long story short, right? Although, I'm playing with that idea right now. But long story short, we had billionaire Charles Shimoni speak, and we actually recorded it and everything, right? And we had like 100 people show. And if you would have asked me, Jason, you would have said, "Hey, Vlad, uh, what are you, like what's going to look like this year?" I was like, we just had a billionaire speak. I'm
Yeah.
thinking all billionaires this year are going to be
Yeah.
speaking at our events. It's going to be popping. It's going to be crazy, right? And it was wonderful. We had the president of Microsoft, all that obviously at the very tip top,
Mhm.
and then co-founder of Xbox, and then also at the kind of bottom, we had local, serial entrepreneurs, seven-figure entrepreneurs. It was awesome. Literally 1 month later, COVID
Yeah.
hits. So here's a fun fact, right? So at that time, my company was doing 500K, right, in revenue, and I was helping the community. And this is where it's like the focus question comes into play as well, right? So my mentor said, Vlad, just focus on your business. So I did, and that's when we hit our first $1 million revenue year, right? This was 2020, and then right now things are opening up. So I'm like, how do I give back but still focus on my business? And
Yeah.
that's where I'm trying to balance that
Yeah,
out.
it's a big thing, right? Because like
Yeah.
people are realize like new to event, it takes a lot out of you, right? Because you got to plan, you got to reach out to people, like you just don't say I'm gonna do an event tomorrow and it happens, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of planning and stuff, execution.
Yeah, and the mental energy, right? And the bigger the event, the more work it takes, right? And it's a mental energy, and it's another one of the shiny object syndromes, right? That I talk about with my friends a lot. And there's I call them sirens now. Actually, I'm not even calling them shiny objects. I'm calling sirens, because you got the odyssey of how the
Yeah,
sirens are calling, and they're gonna kill you. And it's hard, right? Because there's always great entrepreneurs, great people, but it can be a very tough thing to balance, And my mentor actually always one of them. I have multiple, by the way. I have four. I guess I'll just say it. Screw it, right? So I have four mentors, right? One is 8-figure, and the other three are 9-figure
okay,
mentors, right? And I'm not going to ask them because I didn't tell them I would, but they were some of the speakers you saw at Co-Founders Connect,
okay.
right? And so that's why I keep referring to them. And they actually talk about end outcomes a lot. They're like, Vlad, why are you doing what you're doing right now? What's your end outcome? Why are you volunteering? You know, yeah.
So talking about mentors, so you have your mentors, but are you mentoring anyone?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm mentoring two kids right now, actually. And I call them kids, but it depends on the mentality. So
Yeah.
one's like, I'm 20 years old, Vlad. What do you mean? I'm like, you can't even drink. But he's crushing it right now. His company's growing super fast. Then there's another one actually that came to your event last time, and he's in high school.
Okay.
And
The one
yeah.
that goes to Charles White Academy, I think.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And so I'm mentoring him. And then there's this other gal I talked to, and she's trying to start like an art studio. And then, there's other people that I help in the community, and I talk to them on online forums and all that kind of stuff. And then yeah, and then whenever somebody reaches out, I'm always happy very flexible. It
Mhm.
just hit me up.
Um, so for your schedule that you do you have any time that you like blocked off just for you, right?
So I used
And
to
you
do
and,
that.
and you let people know that, or how's that work
So
for
my
you?
schedule today is what I call insane, right? For most people, I wake up at 6 a.m. When I wake up, I have like 3 minutes to get ready, right? And that's on a good day. And I'll literally jump in with my sales guy right now. And that's the first meeting of the day, literally right out of
And
bed.
that's 3 minutes after you wake up. That is
Yep.
fucking
Because
insane.
I wake up at 6 a.m. and then I'm like, hey, how you doing, right? And then I've got like the notes, and then I work most of the time till 7:30. So and I don't work for an hour and a half. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
Nice. So next, I think you started your first company at 18.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you think you got entrepreneurial bug so early?
Well, yeah, it goes back to the childhood story we talked about, right? Like feeling like an immigrant, feeling like I'm not contributing enough. I felt like an outsider, like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. That's why these other kids don't talk to me. No, they don't talking to you because you don't know the language, right? And you don't have the friends, right? Because because my parents can't speak English, right? So it's like maybe if you're in a local neighborhood, right, and your kid's son is Bobby, right? And then there's whatever Robbie, right? Like your families know each other, so you're interconnected. You play together as a kid. Me, I'm like an outsider. My parents can't connect, right? So I was like, man, I can't. And I guess that's why I'm network a shit ton, because I couldn't connect with people when I was younger. I had a whole language barrier until about the age of 16, and then it kind of also happened by accident. I guess it's kind of like wiring, it's also, it's a mix, right? A mix of all these different things. So,
and including your current one, you've started like 4 or 5 companies.
yes and no, right? I will definitely define myself I'll define myself as an entrepreneur. However, it depends on, what is that really? So Logic Inbound's obviously a successful company. Before that, I got 200,000 downloads on the Android App Store with a company called Shoplets LLC. It was an LLC, but that one only made about $2,000 a month. It was bootstrapped profitably. I never raised funding, by the way. I always bootstrap everything. And then the next company after that is I started Skyreal. Skyreal, that one got to about 10K a month in MER. And the reason I did this and then started Logic Inbound and got to hit the $1 million revenue mark is because I wasn't confident enough to raise funding. I didn't want to waste anybody's money. So now I feel very confident. Like, hey, look at all those other entrepreneurs, zero experience. They just have a belief and maybe some, hustle. But me, I've got the framework. And now if, the next stuff, maybe I'll raise money in the future. But yeah.
And these companies, were you always a solo founder or you a co-founder?
Oh yeah, no, I've been blessed. I was super duper blessed. So it's me and my cousin Hike. And he's the antithesis of me. He's very quiet, very thoughtful, and he's the programmer, right? I like to joke. I like to say I feed him under the door, actually, keep him locked in the basement. But yeah, so he's on that side of the business, and then I'm more on the sales side, networking, leadership. I'm definitely a very big picture.
Okay. I think you wrote a book, you did a LinkedIn article or something that says "Stacking the Deck: How to Improve Your Odds of Luck in the Startup Game." You remember that?
Yeah, yes and no. Yeah, I'd love to talk about luck. I love luck. So the concept of luck, there's actually a book by Annie Duke. So you guys should check out Annie Duke's books as well. They're great on luck, right? And the concept. And so the way I think about it is everything you do will either increase your percentage of success or decrease it, right? And so this kind of goes back to prioritization, right? Whatever your priority should be week to week, right, is whatever you think is going to increase your odds of success, right? And no one really knows, right? A lot of these 9-figure guys, no offense to them, right? They'll tell you they were lucky, right? But what does that mean, right? There's something called blind luck. Blind luck is, hey, Vlad, I was walking to you and then I bumped into a guy who was selling lottery tickets, bought a lottery ticket, won $1 million. I'm a genius, right? And there are those even in business, right? Where they're quote unquote not as intelligent or whatever. But look, the game's not all about intelligence. It's about hustle, right? And leveraging yourself, right? So there's the blind luck, right? Then there's the kind of the unplanned luck, but you kind of position yourself for it, right? Then there's, I would say something, this is my skill. There's the standard luck, right? Standard luck is kind of things that, hey, if I cold email 100 podcasters, right, I'll get on a podcast, right? That's kind of hey, if you play the field enough, right? If you ask enough guys or girls to go out on dates, right, you'll get a date eventually, right? And then there's the bad luck, right? Which is something happens not in your favor, right? And then there's bad blind luck, right? Which, we see in, horrible movies of tragedy, right? So that's kind of the sphere. And so you want to maximize this side, right?
And so earlier you talked about people they want to retire young and stuff, right? But isn't it amazing to me? You have people that say, I want to retire young, I want to retire 45, 50, but they're still, working the same, I don't want to say bullshit job, but the same bullshit job. They do nothing to improve themselves and they get mad. I see someone start retiring early, CEOs make all this money, they're doing all this risky stuff, right? You're just doing the same thing, right?
Yeah, the risk is real.
You think there's a mindset of people like this and there's nothing to do about it, or
the mindset of retiring or
I want to retire without putting the work in, so to speak?
Yeah, it's tough, right? It's easy to be bitter. It's easy to be angry in the world, right? Life is not an easy thing, right? Some days, I still have the philosophy every day above ground is a great day, right? But even I, with my insanely positive philosophy, right? You still got to take your lumps and your bruises and whatnot, right? But that's kind of what makes, I think, a great entrepreneur is tenacity, right? And then in terms of, kind of why do people so you're asking why do people complain versus take risks and improve themselves?
And
I think it has to do with a lot of, it's a mixture of factors. I actually have a bachelor's in psychology also.
Maybe genetics, parenting.
Yeah, nature, factors, nurture. Yeah.
Friends that are around.
Yeah.
And probably around 5 friends who complain about everything too,
Yeah, there's the nature and there's the nurture, right? So there's both. For instance, America, actually, I was looking at this recently. Did you know, Jason, we have the most unicorns. I think we have something like $4,000 billion companies in America versus any other country, right? Now, granted, we're one of the world superpowers, right? So that obviously is an easy one right there to point at, right? However, another thing that's interesting, right, is our, capitalistic system and stuff like that, right? And then another thing is, we have Silicon Valley where people, congregate a lot. So yeah, I think it's really positioning. It's why were people do what they do because they're positioned to do, right? Your environment, right? Like this is the environment for a podcast. Podcasting is super freaking easy, right? If me and you were trapped in this door for another 10 hours, we'd probably do more hours of podcasting, right? You know, we could, you know, do other things, right? But really that's what the environment's set for. So I think the environment plays a factor. It's, you know, it's the, you know, nature and the nurture part.
Here's one for you. So let's suppose I'll use economic demographic. Suppose there's an economic demographic that's doing well off, right? The CEOs, they're making 7 figures, they're living a good life. Another demographic, like they're on welfare, they're like really do bad. Is it the responsibility of the upper economic to bring those people up, or is the lower responsibility like go find these people and get opportunities?
I mean, it's an easy question for me actually, but also you can challenge me as much as you want. By the way, I don't care. This is easy. Both. It's both, right? Are you supposed to help other people, or are you supposed to help yourself, right? Both. You're supposed to help yourself, right? You got to put and I always like to say, right? If you look at, you know, ever go on flight, you put the breathing mask on yourself first, right? Take care of yourself, and then you help other people. You know, however, you know, it's a never ending kind of. This is like a longer discussion as well. Yeah.
I just think too many people are like, oh, I use Seattle or Bellevue example, right? Oh, all the opportunities in Seattle or Bellevue, we can't get there. What do you mean you can't get there? You can't get a bus or Uber, like, you know. And then again, like, if you're like, I'll say like a rich person, you're like, why am I going to go down, like, you know, a local economic? First of all, there's no way where you can do a networking event there. There's nothing there. All the resources are here, right?
100%. You know, I used to, what's interesting is I had the antithesis kind of belief that a lot of, I guess, poor-minded people do, right? Is my belief was that rich people, or, you know, successful people don't want to help unsuccessful people. They're greedy, whatever, right? And that's not the truth.
True.
Yeah, but they're also not the other. What I had, my antithesis belief was that they're kind. They're super kind, and that's also not true. The truth is, a successful person is just a person, right? Like there's millionaire assholes that I've met, many of them, right? After doing my events for 6 years, and I met really kind, you know, millionaires. And arguably billionaires, right? Because when a billionaire spoke for free at my event, right, that guy gets waste like his time, and he's probably spent an hour of his time driving plus speaking, right?
Prepping for the speech, whatever, you know.
Shout out to Charles Shimoni, right? Like one of my favorite people, one of my favorite billionaires ever. He's probably number one on the list. Actually, definitely is. But basically, I would say the reason, you know, successful people don't help as much, right, is because the people that are asking for help aren't positioned for it, right? We go back to the environment.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, environment's everything, right? You set up the right environment, and I was watching a Denzel Washington video, and he said, you know, you hang around the barbershop long enough, you get your hair get cut. So that's what it is, you know. Surround yourself with what you want. Yeah,
definitely. Can you talk about how you do your sales funnel?
Great. Yeah, any questions? Yeah. So in terms of the way I think about sales, right? And this is we're marketing. Logic Inbound is a digital marketing, you know, agency. And now obviously Restoration Inbound, we're focused now on fire, water damage, mold remediation, biohazard companies. And the first thing I do now that I wish I would have done in the past is I'm focused on the fire, water damage, mold remediation industry, right? And what I like to tell people is the best companies, the best people, they build the best, they have the best communities around them, right? Like if you think of a great company like Apple, right? Or, you know, Google, whatever, right? They've got their tribes. So I think when you're building a business, your number one job is to build a phenomenal community around your product or service. And then what's going to happen as almost like a second, this is just my philosophy, as a second order consequence, people will want to do more business with you, and people will basically keep creating like almost a self-perpetuating cycle of buying and then referring other people, because you just keep building that tribe. So that's my philosophy on marketing and how to build you know, kind of sales and businesses, is build a community around whatever you're doing. And obviously you've got to you're going to find pain points, and your job is to solve those problems, fill those needs. And then now you're asking about, oh, what about your sales funnel? So how do you get people in that community? Jason, I mean, you know, there's a million ways to get people in that community. You could throw events, you could do a podcast, you could do SEO, you could do cold calls. I've done all the above, actually, right? You could do social media posts. I've gotten clients for social media, right? And there's actually, I forgot what this billionaire guy's name is, but basically the quote, he had a great quote. It was, any advertising or sales funnel will work if you give it enough time and budget and work behind it. The question isn't, is it going to work? The question is, how effective is it for the channel, right? That's the real question, you know? And I was talking to a mentee, and he was like, I don't understand what you're talking about. I was like, well, think about it this way, right? Like if you're selling $10 hats, right, door to door, right, like that's going to be a very long and arduous, hard sales cycle, right? Like if you keep going door to door trying to sell your hats, right, you might sell a couple, but that's really hard, right? However, right, if you run it, Google Ads, which we've done as well, right, that'll convert better, right? So then it becomes a question of, okay, this is the service that I'm trying to provide. This is the difference I'm trying to make in the world, right? And then how do I access that community in the most, scalable, leverageable way? That's for the lowest cost.
So how long should someone like invest time in a certain sales funnel, right? Should I give like a month, 2 weeks? Or I guess it just depends on the sales funnel, right?
Great question. Yes, it does depend. And there's a book. There's a book for every answer, basically, for every question. You know what? I always love, by the way, that this is a longer form podcast because people say, Vlad, what book should I read? And I'm like, dude, it's like what song or what movie? There's a book for everything. So when it comes to gaining traction for your startup, I highly, highly recommend the book written by Gabriel Weinberg. He actually, yes, I'm setting this up before I give the title because it's such a great book. By Gabriel Weinberg. He actually, at 27 years old, was a multimillionaire, retired already. And then he started a little company called DuckDuckGo. Have you used DuckDuckGo?
I know that company. I know that
$1 billion company.
I know that company.
While he was starting a $1 billion company, he wrote a book on to how to grow your business. You want to know what the name is? I'm not going to give it. I'm just kidding. It's called Traction by Gabriel Weinberg.
Okay.
And there's two Traction books. There's one by Vern Harnish, right, which is about operating. No, it's called Traction by Gabriel Weinberg. And he wrote, I think, one of the best books. And he has something called the Bullseye System. So that book is phenomenal. Then the second thing that you're asking is, when do you stop?
Yeah.
When do you stop doing something? So there's another book for that answer, right? So it's the book called Quit by Annie Duke, right? So she wrote one about odds and luck. And, I read a couple books on luck. But Quit, literally that whole book is about when do you stop doing something? And it also talks about how in business and in life, period, we actually, we tell people that quitting is a bad thing. We ostracize people that quit.
Yeah.
And we say, oh, you're quitting, that's the worst decision. However, what about pivoting, right? What about people who got divorced and then went to marriages that were super healthy, right? So quitting can be a wonderful thing. And she talks about the whole process of how to know when to quit, how to quit, all that kind of stuff. And the short answer there is there's something called quit markers. We set quit markers. It's a simple thing of saying, hey, what's the goal, right? So the goal is, we're starting a cleaning company. We're going to spend, I don't know, $5,000. We want to get whatever, $20,000 for the campaign. Okay. Then what's the timeline you're going to run it at, right? This is how much time we're going to put. And then what is the quit marker? And you're like, well, what do you mean? Isn't the quit marker the goal? You hit it or not? No, the quit marker is, it's a check-in point. By X time, if I haven't hit my goal, I'm going to stop trying to pursue that goal. And so quit markers are very key. It's like if me and you are scaling Everest, we say, hey, let's say we have a week, right? If by the third day of the week, if we haven't scaled, X percentage, a quarter of the way up the mountain, we should just turn back down and replan the whole thing.
Yeah. So from your point of view, when should a small business bring on a digital marketing company? A certain amount of revenue from the first off the bat, or?
Phenomenal question. So basically, it's an easy question actually for me to answer. This is just my opinion, of course, but I think you should not hire a digital marketing agency if your company is doing less than $300,000 a year, right? Most of the time, you're going to get sold cheap packages. It's like hiring a nutritionist for $5, right? They're going to create a really crappy nutrition plan for you, right? I like to tell people when you get to around 400K or more, that's when you can start hiring digital marketing agencies. And one of my favorite philosophies is one channel gets you to 1 million, right? So if you could just invest in SEO and be the greatest SEO of all time, that'll get you to 1 million, right? Then basically what'll get you to 10 million is having a really phenomenal product or service. And then you can pick other multiple channels. So like right now, I'm in the middle of, we did the one channel to 1 million. So we got to 500,000 through building up awesome partnerships with people. Then over the years, and that was pretty slow, right? Then we utilized Upwork, and Upwork got us the other kind of 500,000 because it just sped up the introductions, right? Now I'm looking to pick 3 to 4 other marketing channels to get us to, the next level, maybe 2 or 3 or whatever.
And so let's suppose someone is ready to bring on an agency, right? And I might be making this up, but it's not like, you go to an SEO company and they'll say, hey, ABC Towing signed up with us for 6 months. You want to see results for 6 months. So if I'm a small business, I'm like, I'm going to give you money. Like I'm guessing like maybe $5,000-$10,000 a month, what the fee is for 6 months. And I have no idea if you're going to do results. Of course, you're the business owner, like the SEO person, like, it does take 6 months. I'm not gonna do it for free, right? So how do people balance that, right? Like,
That's a phenomenal question, right? So this goes back to what you were talking about, right? Before hiring somebody, right? You need to be at a certain scale. That's why I said you have to make 400K, 500K. So that $5,000, like people have paid me $15,000 a month, right? And they did it without blinking. That was a $1 billion company. The company's called ClickBank, right? And we didn't even do their SEO, by the way. We just gave them the strategy for like, many months for their SEO, right? How about that, right? If I get 5,000, they paid me 15K just for strategy for me and my team, right? So basically, it varies on your scale. So you need to pay something where you can wait 6 months. That's not a lot of money. And most of the time, right, people just want to hire somebody. Oh, you solve the problem, right? You're not, if you're not making enough money, you got to pay your stripes, right? You got to pay your dues, right? Get your stripes, pay your dues. So that's why I say go on Upwork maybe, right? And pay somebody maybe $300 to teach you. The first thing I think everybody could teach themselves to get to maybe 300 to 400K inside their business. But if you're not there, then that means you're missing some lessons. Then once you understand the basics of things, then you can go and hire the experts.
so what is digital marketing? Is it basically like trying to be number one in the Google list? Is like Google Analytics? Like what all is involved?
What's digital marketing?
Yeah.
I would define digital marketing as simply using the internet, right? Using technology to drive qualified customers, clients, leads, right, to your business. That's digital marketing, right?
So right now you do restoration companies, correct?
So we have a portfolio of about 40 companies, but we have working actively with 9 restoration companies. And actually next week, we're going to be bringing on 2 more.
So why I used to focus on medical companies, right? Or doctors?
Yeah, I've done doctors as well. Yeah.
So why the switch to this new type of company? You just do some research and
That's a phenomenal question. So yeah, great question. So when it comes to choosing niches, right? I tried to force a niche, right? So instead of trying to force a niche, one of my team members actually, he said, Vlad, don't force the niche, let the niche pick you. And I would honestly say it picked me. Why did it pick me? Because we had 2 of these companies in our portfolio and we had people actually inviting us to speak. And so I was like, wow, I'm really well positioned to do this, right? Let me go. It's the whole nature versus nurture thing, right? You can have the nature in you, or you can be nurtured for a topic, but if you don't have the nature there, so you need both. So we were positioned well. In terms of medical, the first thing I learned in healthcare marketing, by the way, is that if you say you specialize in healthcare, that's like saying you specialize in business. So then we said, okay, well, we can't say that, right? Everybody specializes in healthcare. Let's go even deeper. Let's say we specialize in working with naturopaths. And I could have followed that. In fact, I did a podcast and I got 3 clients out of that podcast. However, what I ended up learning was that, it was a niche that was tricky and my company didn't really resonate, right? For whatever reason, we just didn't resonate with it. And I didn't have, the connections and the experiences. But then last but not least, naturopaths, no offense to you guys, naturopaths. Thank you. I love you. However, I didn't really resonate with them. So a big thing I would tell people is you have to resonate with your target audience, right? If you don't resonate with your target audience, guess what's going to happen when you talk to them, when you try to deliver services for them, all that, right? Like it's going to kind of shine, right? So we didn't resonate enough to focus completely on it versus fire water damage. Like those are my people because they're most of the time, right? They're coming up, right? They're not like, they don't have a huge ego. They're blue collar. It's immigrant, right? And I was like, these are immigrant type people. I love them.
um. So what's your process of firing a client?
Oh, how do I fire a
Yeah.
client?
How does that work for you?
Oh my goodness, you're taking me over to, what's interesting is I actually had to fire a client one time when my grandfather passed away. And I was more nervous going to fire the client than I was to my grandfather's funeral. And I had to give the eulogy to my grandfather's funeral, but I was prepared for that part of life, right? But because I have not fired a lot of clients. I fired maybe a handful of clients, right? So the first way I fire a client is I don't make it a firing, so to speak. Is I say, hey, why don't you get back to me when this happens? And most of the time, I think in my head, like, this probably, they're never going to come back, right? And so that's the one thing, like, hey, you have to change this and then you can work with us, right? That's the first thing I turn away clients. The second way is, hey, I'd love to provide value. And they actually really appreciate this. I'd say, I'd love to provide value for this. However, the campaign we're working on is just not going to be successful for you. And I would hate to waste your money. And I tell them, the crappy part is I could take your money and I get no points for doing this. I think I can refer you to some other better vendors or people. And then I refer them out. And that's actually, in that time, I worked with this guy who he knows who he is. But basically, wasn't thankful, right? And we scaled this guy's company from 7 to 8 figures. We were part of the journey. It's not like I did all the work. And it was a contentious conversation. He wasn't easy to work with. And I told them also, like, hey, I have to pick my team. My team, they're booked out, right? It's hard. We think you're better suited with another vendor. And then, kindly enough, he left.
So what advice can you give to people who are trying to figure out what they should charge, whether they're a startup founder company or whatever they're doing? What's your advice on figuring out what they should charge?
I love this. I love this. There's I think a Dan Kennedy quote. He says, say a number as large as you can without cracking a smile. And that's what you should charge. So that's the short answer, but there's better answers there, right? You got to study the industry, study your competitors, think about your value proposition, right? When you're a business owner, you're trying to create value for the market, whether it's a service or a product. So what you got to do is think to yourself like, okay, what am I providing? What are they providing? And you've got to be objective about it, which is so freaking hard because everybody thinks they're the man. It's like, you're the man. I'm the man. We're the best. Everything we do is the best. My clothes are the best, whatever, right? But the truth is, right, you're probably not, right? And so you got to think about objectively, okay, what value are you delivering? And then you test it with the market, right? And that's how you find the optimal price points.
So you have a Google partnership on right now. Are you a Google partner?
Yeah, we are Google partners.
Can you talk about what that is involved with all?
Oh, that's easy. That's a very easy thing, right? You can become a Google partner by spending a certain amount of money with Google through Google Ads, and then they shot us an email and then they said, oh, we can give you a bicycle, we can give you gloves, they start sending. If you spend enough money with people, they're gonna start sending you shit thank yous, Yeah.
So do you think ChatGPT is gonna take the place of Google?
Oh my goodness, I love this question. So basically, I think eventually that everything's going to be AI ran. I think ChatGPT, I hate to say this, it's an unpopular opinion, but I think it's like Yahoo, right? Yahoo was the first major player, one of the early major players. I'm sure there's other search engines and whatnot, right? But I think eventually there's a very high chance that something else is going to come that's as good, if not better, than than ChatGPT. However, there's a quote by Sam Altman that really hit me. He said, who wants to look at 10 blue links for every question they have, right? That's a boring thing. So I think that ChatGPT is already and will continue to eat away at the search market, and I'm sure Microsoft has it on its obviously to-do list, right? Of figuring out how to, stifle Google. The problem is, as one of my mentors says, how the hell do you compete with someone who doesn't charge a price, right? Because there's no open price point for Google's algorithm, right? It's just a free engine. How do you compete with that, right? And then they've got some kind of hidden proprietary algorithm, right? Those are really great, competitive advantages, right? So I think eventually, as all companies do, Google will die, right? And then somebody will come along, but it's not going to be anytime soon, at least.
No. So I think you've done a great job putting yourself out there. You've been on podcasts, you've been on Geekwire, different publication stuff, PR stuff. First of all, how do you find the opportunities and what's the advantage of doing this kind of stuff?
That's a great question. So one thing everybody needs to know about everything, right? I'm gonna give you a generic answer is it's kind of like if you drive a Tesla and then you start seeing more Teslas on the road, right? I look for these opportunities. And the truth is also what happens is as I got more successful over time, these opportunities start coming to me. And to be really honest, right? A lot of time I'll just turn people down because I'm like, I don't have time for this, right? I'd rather build a real business than talk about building a business. I could probably be on 50 more podcasts this year, right? Because I got to the point of success, right? So for the people listening out there who aren't getting on podcasts, go do some interesting shit that will get you on podcasts and that'll have people want to talk to you. Once people know about your credentials and your background, oh, you went through the Goldman Sachs School of Business, you ran a marathon, you run a $1 million company. Oh, great. We'd love to have you on the podcast, right? But if you haven't done any of those things, right? Why the hell are we gonna get you on podcast? Because you have a nice smile, it's like, yeah. So that's my advice to people who want to get on podcasts or just get more attention. You got to earn that right. Same thing with delivering value for clients. You have to earn that right.
Is there some type of big time marketing podcast out there, big time business podcast that you want to be on, like your bucket list podcast?
Not really. Okay. I always listen to the Entrepreneur on Fire podcast,
with
and I was like,
John Lee Dumas.
Yeah, and I was like, man, if I'm on that podcast, I've made it. And then I was thinking, man, what's that going to get me, right? I'm on this podcast. Number one for you, Jason. I really appreciate what you did for the community. You're putting on these events. You're a go-getter, right? And I'm like, oh, this is a cool dude, and I've known you for many years, right? However, right, like I said, right, it's as my mentors say, what is your end outcome? What do you want to get out of it, right? I'll probably use this. I'll clip this on different groups I'm a part of, right?
Yeah.
However, at the end of the day, this is not the highest leverage activity for me, right?
Yeah, people don't know this, but when I started for my podcast, John Lee Dumas had a free podcast course. So I just got everything from him, right?
That's amazing.
And he does it all for free, which always kills me how these people, you know, $5,000 for I teach how to do a podcast. John Lee Dumas gives all for free, right? Which
That's
is
awesome.
yeah. Um, back in 2019, you I think like something called 30 Under 30.
Yes, 425.
Was that the 425 magazine? Okay.
Mhm.
What was that something like you nominated for, or like,
Yes.
or is it like kind of like
So it's something that, so you know what's interesting is a lot of all these 425, Forbes, 30 under 30. I made that such a big deal, by the way. So I actually got on the cover of that magazine.
Mhm.
It was me and like two other people, right? And I remember this one other guy. He was actually very successful, I think, at the time. And I don't know, I don't know what he's doing, but he's like, why did you get on the cover? Right.
Mhm.
I genuinely don't know. But the way I got on that magazine was literally blind luck.
Yeah.
But it's actually not blind luck. Blind luck is just, you happen to bump into somebody. I would say it's maybe when preparation meets opportunity.
Yes.
I'm
yes.
such a networker. I actually, and shout out to him. I have to reach out to actually the founder of 45 magazine. I actually literally was sitting at a Starbucks in Bellevue. And this guy was like, yeah, entrepreneurship is awesome. And he did like a little cheers thing. And then I was like, hey, I heard you say entrepreneurship is awesome, man. I think it's awesome too. Cheers. And then we just got to talking.
Yeah.
And it turned out this guy was the founder of 45 magazine, one of the owners, right? And then he was like, Vlad, you should apply to the 30 under 30. So he told me to apply. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll apply, right? I didn't even know it was a thing, right? And because I wasn't really looking for it, right? And then what ended up happening was I ended up, getting on the cover and all that kind of stuff. And then I thought he was the reason I got on the cover. And then he was like, no, Vlad, I had nothing to do with that. I think the reason I got on the cover is because of the day we did photo shoots. I was just super kind to everybody.
Okay.
I was like, hi, I'm Vlad. How can I help you? What are you looking for? And being a giving person, I'm always happy to do something. What introductions you're looking for? I'll make one introduction, right?
Yeah.
And then after I get that one introduction, we'll see people will reveal their colors, right? So basically, right, that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, well, you got a good point about how like networking pays in the long run. Like a lot of people think I'm gonna go to a networking event tomorrow, and Tuesday I'm gonna get $1 million, whatever. It doesn't work like that. For example, so last July I did I hosted a pitch competition at Western Maritime Incubator Tacoma with Karina.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically an incubator for like startups, right? For water startup, water-based startups. We did a pitch competition. 50 people applied. We picked 6. One of the people there was a company called Black Muse, David Robichaud and his partner Taylor Tate, right? Great people. And so fast forward November, so what they do, they have an AR/VR company. They teach like kids how to code an AR/VR. So November they did a pitch competition where these kids like pitch their things, right? Asked me to be a judge. And there I met a guy named Daniel Blue, a banker out of Seattle, I think, right? Met him, we hit it off. 3 weeks ago, he introduced me to a guy who's gonna, help me like raise funds, right? So if I didn't do this pitch competition and all these steps later, I think too many people get confused. Like I'm gonna go to a networking event. Oh, it was a waste of my time. Like, no, you got to be patient, right?
Yeah, you got to think long term. That's a big part of of business that people, everybody wants it too fast. What's funny is I got scammed out of 13K by a scammer who said you got to think long term to me, and he was true because he scammed me over the course of freaking 2 years. He played a long con, right? And I was like, what? But if you think about it, right, he would meet me maybe like once every other week, right, with his fake persona for 2 years, and he went completely under the radar because he was one of my best friend's clients, right? And basically, right, that even scammers will tell you got to think long term, right?
Yeah.
The people that are, and he was one of the best scammers ever, by the way. Like if you Google his name, if anybody wants to DM me, I'll give you the name and whatnot. I don't care. But basically, he's got like the government after him. Like this guy's like he scammed me out of like 13K. Like he scammed people out of 200, 250K. But it's the long con because he'll build relationships up over a long time. And then he'll say, hey, I'm starting a venture. Would you like to invest?
Yeah.
And whatever, right? So long story short, right? He was good at building relationships, unfortunately, shitty at business, right? Because the real thing is you've got to think of over a lifetime, right? Like, hey, we're going to be connected for the next 20 years. Think about all the opportunities we're going to come across, right? And if you stay top of mind with networking, you reach out, you should reach out at least 6 months, every 6 months, because that's when the most new connections, the most new opportunities and experiences happen to people that they can share, right? Then like you can get a lot of value from one another. And it's freaking an amazing, one of the best resources because it's free.
So
besides your time.
Talk about this. Of course, majority of people are going to give you good advice, have your best interest at heart. However, there's a few people that they're going to scam you or they give good advice for like back in 1999. This is right.
Yeah.
As a business owner, how do you like wade through all this advice you're getting and pick what you need and like kind of ignore without, of course, like someone gives you advice, you want to say, that's some stupid ass shit. Like, you want to be kind of nice, right?
Yeah. And there's I think guy, not Robert Kiyosaki, but Guy Kiyosaki, right? He's actually wrote a book called Wise Guy, and he wrote about something called Rich Bozo syndrome. So I say that to say this, that sometimes even rich people can give horrible advice, right? So I think you got to look at something whenever you make an informed decision. You need multiple data variables, and you have to be objective, right? So if you're trying to buy a course for something from somebody really successful, right? Okay, like does he have testimonials? Is it tailored towards you? How many testimonials do they have? Is there a free trial you could use? Right. So basically, you kind of look at all the different pieces of data and try to get as much information as you can. And then the more decisions you get, right, the more decisions you make, the better you'll get at making future decisions. That's part of the game, as long as you keep learning.
So back to networking, I think a lot of people do a good job of networking. They meet people, they get like 505, 4 or 5 LinkedIn connections, emails, whatever, and then they never follow up. Talk
Hmm.
about the importance of following up and like how do you like should you like follow up like every week? Like what's the whole process that you think?
So that's a great question. It depends. Like for instance, I just actually flew back last week. So last Saturday, I just came back from Chattanooga, Tennessee. I flew back, and so I just met people at the conference. Right. So this is what I should have done. I didn't do as good of a job executing here, being very transparent on this podcast. Basically, I should have emailed everybody this week, and then the next week I should have cold called all of them. Right. So what I'm doing is I'm actually calling them and texting them, but basically 2 weeks after because I'm letting them recover. But that's because of them, right? And my follow-up cadence for that is fairly aggressive, right? I think if you're at a conference and you meet somebody, the next 3 or 4 business days, you should quickly reach out to them. The longer you wait, obviously, the less they're going to get to know you. But then after you meet with somebody to get the initial meeting, then the very easy question, nobody freaking asks this because people, if humans are the funniest and most interesting people you ever meet, they never say, "Hey, when's a good time to follow up with you?" You just ask them, "What's your cadence?" "Oh, I'm slammed right now, man. I'm sorry, whatever." "Okay, cool, no worries. Maybe a quarter or 6 months. What you thinking?" I don't know. Okay, maybe like end of the year, I'll just put you on kind of that list, right?
So with that, what is code for don't call me back?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, you read the room, right? Or hey, anytime you like. Cool. Well, let's we don't have a strong reason to connect right now, but let me reach out in maybe 3 or 4 weeks, see if anything pops up, and stay at top of mind, right? And then that person you might reach out every monthly or every 3 or 4 months. And then the one thing I said at your conference, which I think a lot of people need to know, is you're never going to get the most trust out of somebody and the most business on the first interaction, right?
yeah.
Even the bigger the transaction, by the way, the more interactions it'll take, right? Even though it to sell something for $1,000, it might take 2 meetings. To sell something for 10,000, it might take 3. So
Yeah.
it's not like that many more, but it's still more,
Mhm.
right? So you've got to do it over time. And once you meet with somebody the fifth, sixth time, like me and you, like I've known you for how many, like 4 or 5
4 or 5 years,
years.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Now I'm on your podcast. Now I'm speaking
Yeah.
at the conference, right? Now we're getting value back and forth. I'm making, I'm happy to make vendor introductions, all that kind of stuff, right?
So talk about this Goldman Sachs 10,000 small business program. Is
Oh
that a is
man.
that that's a pretty big deal?
Yeah, well, for me, yes. And my mentee is actually shout out to him, is 20 years old. He's actually probably going to be one of the youngest people going through the Goldman Sachs Small Business Program. Um, and so that program is a great program. And why is it created? Right? What is the angle? What does Goldman Sachs get out of it? Um, what Goldman Sachs says, and the truth is at the bottomless pit, as some people say. Long story short, Goldman Sachs, I think what they say is they're thinking super long term. So they want to show and build relationships with people, right? Now other people say that it's for political purposes, other people say it's just to gain leverage, it's marketing, whatever, but the whole thing is free. So I highly recommend you go to it, Jason. Actually, I can recommend you in. And once you get into the program, right, they go through and they teach hiring, firing, sales, marketing. They connect you with peers at your level. They give you mentors. And yeah, the whole program is designed around how to be a great business owner.
So do you think being in a big city, do you think the location you're at, it gives you advantage or disadvantage as an entrepreneur? Like suppose you're in Seattle versus, Yakima, Washington, or maybe Dallas, Texas versus, Mesquite, Texas.
Hell yeah,
Um,
environment, And I remember reading, environment. That's one of the biggest things that I think I even take for granted and most people do that aren't as successful as they want to be. Environment's everything. And it's not just where you're at in the city, but what about your room? Do you have posters? Do you have reminders, whatever, right? Like, environment's a big thing. Do you have your shoes if you want to run every day, right? We're talking about habits. Right? You already know what I'm going to say. You have
yeah.
them by the door
Yeah.
where it's super easy to put them on with, I actually have a little pack of gum. So whenever I go on a walk, I can have a piece of gum. Right. That's my little rule, right? It makes it really easy. Or is that shit in the closet somewhere because you never even have running shoes, right? So environment, setting it up to succeed is a part of it for sure.
So, a small business owner, is it more important than does the idea really matter? A couple people said idea doesn't matter execution, but if you don't have an
Both.
idea, like how can you execute it?
You need both, right? And you know, if you don't have an idea, then I would say either, you know, if you can't find something you love or like you have this great idea, I would say, what do you hate? What do you complain about, right? And then if you don't know, just keep a journal, right? And then the last thing is you can always start a simple business, a basic business, right? I started a marketing agency. I think one of the best early companies to start is a marketing agency because getting clients is a big thing, and then you get to interact with many other clients. However, the trap is when you get stuck, right? So now I'm going from generic marketing agency to now I'm becoming a specialist water, fire damage, lead service delivery company with AI and tools. So I'm becoming a tech enabled. Basically, I'm not really becoming a marketing agency anymore. Now I'm becoming a tech enabled kind of SaaS company for restoration companies to deliver, on clients. That's kind of the long term vision, right? So, but you can start off with something generic, right? However, then use that. So you can start a cleaning company, right? And then see how far you get. And then every company you start, you're going to do better and better.
Do you have people that work for you ever come to you and said, "Hey, Vlad, I know you're big on AI. Like, when are you gonna replace me with AI, right?" Are they kind of scared that you're gonna replace me with AI?
No, I mean, they are. Yes and no, right? I would say, hey, look, at the end of the day, right? AI is a tool, right? And we are we're one of the few agencies that we actually use AI in our marketing today, right? And everybody else is starting to now as well, right? And my theory on AI, by the way, is Jason, is AI is going to grow and make a faster impact than the internet ever did.
Yeah, a lot of people think that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think it's going to grow 2 times faster. Like for instance, in my restoration event I went to, they were the 50-year-old, 60-year-old people, but they were already talking about ChatGPT AI year 2, right? Like they are already on top of it, right? It's just implementing it. Somebody needs to help people implement it. But at the end of the day, right? If AI, the other thing is if you get replaced by AI, right, then you've definitely been not building enough skills. You've got to constantly be sharpening your sword, building your skills, right? So if an employee was like, Vlad, am I going to get replaced by AI? Right? I'd say, hey, look, if you were, I would tell you ahead of time.
yeah,
And I'd say, hey, this is what you got to do to be sustainable.
yeah. So with AI, it's like some people are positive AI is the best thing in the world. Other people like AI Skynet's coming. Where do you go in that
I think,
spectrum?
I mean, I hate to say both, right? Because I feel like it's the easy answer. It's like in marketing agency world, right? The easy answer to everything is both. So that's where I told you to challenge, ask me the hardest questions you ever asked any guest, is what I'm going to say, right? But for me, in terms of AI, right, I think it's going to be a net positive, right? I mean, and then Elon actually talks about this. He said, listen, if it's going to be a net negative and it's going to be the end of humanity, would you rather be living through this time right now, or would you rather be like in the 80s or something, right?
Yeah,
Like I'd rather be now to see what happens to the end of the movie. But if it's not the end of the movie, then guess what? We're going to be in a freaking phenomenal movie.
yeah. I know a lot of people say we're living in bad times. I think we're living the best times possible, right? Just like,
100%.
I mean, me personally, I don't want to go back 500 years or 1500s with no water, no electricity, all the diseases. And then you go 500 in the future, shit, you might be no earth, we might have blown ourselves up.
Yeah, 100%. The truth is, I think it's never been a better time to build value in the world, to get ahead, which is why I think even my mentee, he's 20 and he's crushing it and he's making more than most working adults, right? Because the game has never been better set for technology and skills.
Yeah. So what kind of skills that you don't have that you want to build for yourself?
Oh, that's an easy one. Coding.
Coding.
So, and I'm pretty lazy about this, and I always try. So I'm like, I've been on day 6 of 100 days of coding for 100 days, is what I like to say. I've been on day 6 for 100 days for 100 days of coding. So I'm actually, what I need to do, so that's environment, right? We talked about that. So I'm going to set a deadline for myself. I'm actually making a public announcement for this. And next time you see me, either I've built some kind of live app, right? Or next time I'm on a podcast, or I will have gone through some kind of coding boot camp because now I got to change the environment. But yeah, that's the easy skill. I really admire engineers. I think engineering is one of the best skills, right? And then I'm always trying to sharpen my good skills, right? Also, like, how do I get even better at networking, right? Like, I have 9-figure mentors. Why can't I get a $1 billion mentor, right? So these are the types of next level skills I'm looking at. But yeah.
So how do you find these mentors? You just reach out to them. They reach out to you.
All the above.
Okay.
And I always like to tell people, you've got to have an access point. All my mentors, I met them in person, right? But now I'm, trying to get some up virtually, right? I have successfully gotten people virtually as well, right? Just reach out and see how people are doing, and you never know, right? The worst answer is no, as always, right? It's pretty simple. However, you get better and better over time, right? Just like sales, right? So if you want, like, we could probably talk another 2 hours about just getting mentors, like, but yeah, it's I think it's a skill that you get over time, and you got to look for it. You got to be proactive. Where is your priority, right? I think every business, the first thing you should get is a board of advisors and mentors because they make everything else easier. And there's another book, right? I'm throwing so many books at you. One Thing by Gary Keller, right? Basically, he says, what's the one thing you can do that makes everything else easier or unnecessary? So that's what you should focus on. And, if you don't have specific like mentors in your network, go get books and then email the authors. That's another thing I've done. And authors have replied as well.
Yeah. So you have like 13, 15 people working for you?
We used to have a team of 25.
Okay.
I actually ended up doing layoffs in 2021.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, we went from 25 to about 13.
Okay. And are they all in Seattle, across the United States?
About half the team is, local here, and then half is all across.
So how do you like do that? Like, like how do you make sure everything's fair? Like, how do you make sure like, you're not favoritism people in Seattle, or like, how do you work through those dynamics,
Well, that's a great one. In terms of favoritism, right? Our policy is, it might not be the best policy, but I was always, hey, like if something's ever bothering you, please let me know, right? And I always say that, right? And I know that's still not enough for communication, right? But we have a shout outs channel, right, for wins, right? And so I don't know what you mean by favoritism, but basically it's
like,
like,
for example, like, let's suppose it's two people going for promotion, right? You go to Seattle because you see them all the time. You know the personality, you know their family. Where the person, like we're saying, Columbia, South Carolina,
yeah.
they do work with that kind of sight unseen, right?
Yeah. That's hard, right? That's a management question, right? And what I like to do is I like to set career goals, right, for people, right? And then I like to make it very clear on why they did or did not, right? And so as long as you're clear in your logic, right, and consistent and clear, people will love you and they're going to say this is an amazing culture, right? The favoritism and nepotism and all that crap, right? That happens because there's unclear communication and frankly, you're a bad manager, right? If you're a good manager, if you're a good leader in the company, and if the company has to be good culture as well, right? Then the favoritism question is not really going to pop up because ideally, right, everybody should want to get rewarded on their merits, right? So getting rewarded on your merits is very important in business, right? And that's really how you got to set up the structure organization. So if somebody else is getting a raise that you're not, right, you should have clear reasons as to why, right?
And y'all do like weekly meetings, or what's your meeting schedule like?
So we use OKRs.
Okay.
So there's another book. So it's Measure What Matters by John Doerr. And basically they talk about the objectives and key results systems. So we have OKRs. We used to have them for the whole team, but now we actually have profitability numbers. And basically, these numbers are kind of markers people have to hit in their roles. And my team is very senior. The youngest kind of experience in SEO somebody has in my years is 6 years, right? And long story short, right, like everybody has their own kind of goals and numbers that they're tracked by, right? Everybody in a company needs to be tracked to a number and a key result that they're trying to drive.
So like you have like 6 people here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have like you do meetings here. Do you ever like suppose someone does work at Columbia, South Carolina? Do you ever like go there? Hey, Jason, I'm gonna come work with you for a week in Columbia, South Carolina. Do you ever do anything like that?
That's super cool. I didn't do that. I did fly out to Serbia. When I flew out to Italy, we also went to Serbia and I met the team, a couple of people that lived there.
Okay.
I've never met anybody else actually in another kind of state. I have been to my partner Evan's house, right? And my cousin Hike's house, of course. But we actually, the whole team, even the local ones, are remote.
Okay.
So I never made them meet me in person. We used to meet at coffee shops. What's interesting is COVID really changed the shit because I used to work from a laptop, like from the 8 to 20. But we actually got a client, right? Atlas Workbase is a client, because you've been there.
Yeah.
COVID ended up crushing their business. But that's when we used to meet a lot more in person. Nowadays, everything is virtual, everything's remote. And I'm like, screw it. Like I can run the whole thing virtual.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. I mean, I'm a big fan of remote. Remote works, right?
Yes.
However, some people can't work remotely, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So what's your process when someone applies for a job, you have to hire them to make sure they can work remote? You tell them like, show me some remote work projects you did in the past. Like, how do you make sure they get?
Oh, that's easy. So basically, in terms of hiring people, I like to test before I hire. So I'm going to give them some kind of job test to see how they do, right? And then if they do well, then after that, right, like they'll say, okay, well, you passed this test, you passed the culture. I have culture fit questions for hiring, right? You passed the culture fit questions, you passed the skills test, right? We looked at all the other candidates. We think you're the best candidate for the job. You have the experience, all that stuff, right? And then, right, yeah, you got to give it a go, right? Eventually, you get married to see what happens, right? Yeah.
Are there any like marketers that you look up to? Like you like, I don't want to say like you want to be them one day, but like there's marketers out there. Like,
yeah.
Okay, like maybe you follow them or like they have a podcast you listen to.
There's tons of marketers out there, like because I'm in the marketing game, but I want to be an entrepreneur. right? I started this agency because I wanted to learn how to get more clients, right? In terms of people I admire, like one of my mentors, his name is Mark Davis. He, started a company called Pure Clean. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's a phenomenal guy, right? So I admire my entrepreneurs more than marketers. When it comes to marketers that people should follow, there's a million I can name. If you go to ChatGPT right now and say, "Hey, what are the top 10 marketers for X?" They'll give you the top 10 marketers for X, right? You can check out Moz, right? You could check out, for SEO, Viper, Barry Schwartz. He's Rusty Brick on Twitter. There's a ton of great marketers. Will Reynolds, he built a marketing agency. I have marketing agency friends. Shout out to Josh Dirks. I'm actually going to tell him that I tagged him on this podcast. He's a great marketer. He runs a pretty big agency here in Seattle. He's a great guy, right? So there's tons, yeah.
From your time hiring marketing people, SEO people, you want to call them, have you found it makes a difference if they have a college degree or not?
Yeah, I'm actually going to say this. Just the best marketer in the world is Josh Dirks. Josh, I'm doing it for you. I'm going to tell you. But yeah, so for college degree or not, I don't really subscribe to that philosophy. Even though I went to college, right? I got my bachelor's. I think when it comes to degrees, now this is my this is a more controversial opinion. I think the only degrees that are worth it for me personally are I would say computer science, right? Like the STEM degrees, right? Physics, et cetera, because they really teach you how to think well, right? And then, if you're trying to be a doctor or something like that, right? I think those are really the only degrees that are like quote unquote worth it. And then even then, right? It depends. Like for physics, like can you take a course or something, right? Like, so yeah. So I'm actually not a big fan of college degrees.
Yeah, especially now where I think I'm making this up, like college increased like 20,000%, and like, what is the purpose of college? Like to help you find a job, help you think, like no one can answer the question now. It's like,
And it depends on what you want to do, by the way, also, right? Like if you want to be a doctor, you got to get a degree,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
definitely, yeah.
so it's really like it all, like I'll keep repeating myself here, but it's a very critical point. What is the end outcome? Why are you doing what you're doing? And then is what you're doing now the most effective way to get at that end outcome,
Yeah.
right? So that's the biggest thing when it comes to degrees and college and all of that. But it's also, if you're looking to explore and find yourself, I think college is not the place to go. I think it's horrible. I think that if you're looking to explore and find yourself, if I had like a child, I would say, hey, okay, well, why don't we start going to a trade school? Trade school is freaking gold, right?
Yeah.
Or hey, you want to start a business? Why don't I give you, instead of, because I had to pay 50, I pay my way through college, by the way, right? So I'd say, hey, why don't instead of that, why don't I give you 20K to just go start a business?
Yeah.
You'll learn a shit ton more about business, trying to start your own business, and you'll gain a lot more of insight and as well as respect for the business owners that you may serve. Yeah.
So you laid off some people in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
On the flip of that, like, how do you know when it's time to grow? Like, how do you know, like, okay, I need to hire 3 more people, 4 more people? Is it based on revenue, just a gut feeling? Like, how do you know it's time? Like, my people are getting slammed, they're working the butt off. I need to get them some help in here.
Yeah. There's actually a great quote by Howard Schultz, right? He says, growth is a strategy, not like an endpoint, right? He says something like that, right? I'm probably botching it. But, it's actually, this is another controversial kind of like not very well talked about opinion. It's actually sometimes better to be smaller in business, right? There's books that talk about this as well. Of course, I read a lot, but basically, if you think about, for instance, a flea, right? If a flea was the size of a human, it would actually not be able to jump as high because of the air pressure and the air dynamics, right? So sometimes it's better to be small. So it depends on what is the end goal, the mission and the vision of that company. Just because you have a cleaning company and you're doing $2 million a year does not mean you need to be 100 million or $1 billion company, right? There's a great book, Rework by Jason Fried, that talks about this also, right? And so the question is, what is your end goal and why are you trying to grow, right? Are you trying to make more profit? Then maybe you shouldn't optimize for revenue. Maybe you should optimize for profit, right? Are you trying to optimize for time? Okay, well, if it's time, then you're probably going to lose profit because you're going to hire more people, then revenue is going to go up, right? But then profit may go down, right? So it depends on the founder vision and the company vision and goal. And that's how you should think about growth.
And you live in Seattle or one of the other areas?
I live in South Seattle, Tukwila, yeah.
Okay. What's your take on like Seattle business right now? I think the Seattle business startup community think it's a good thing, bad thing, like
I never think it's good enough. That's why I started. That was one of I love Co-Founders Connect because, or at least I loved it when it was around, right? It's kind of basically dead right now, right? But I started it because I was like, what do we, like, why aren't we as good as Silicon Valley? Everybody's obviously measuring themselves against number one, San Francisco, Silicon Valley. was like, why? We have everything we need here, right? But we just kind of need to change the people. But hell, we had Amazon here, we had Microsoft, right? We had some huge companies come out of here, right? So I think the Seattle business community can definitely grow, can definitely be a lot more intelligent. You know, there's people aren't as savvy, right? When they go to one of your events, they don't think like, oh, I'm talking to Vlad or talking to Joe. I'm gonna talk to that person 4 or 5 times to really understand the
Yeah.
full dynamic of how to extract the most value and create the most value. You know, and it's not even just, oh, do you have a client for me? Do I have a client for you? Do we have vendor introductions? It could be, hey, let's give each other pitch feedback.
Yeah.
Let's, I got a LinkedIn post, Vlad. Can I put you on my social list? Right. There's a million ways you can leverage your network, leverage the community. And as my mentor likes to say, you're only limited by your imagination. And so, yeah, our business community is not, I actually thought we were one of like the top 50 startup like communities in the world. I don't even think we are anymore.
Yeah. I don't think so either. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, my thing, I joke around like, like Tacoma wants to be Seattle. Seattle wants to be San Francisco, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'd be happy where you're at right now because Seattle's never going to catch up with the Bay Area, right? It's not going to happen. They're so far ahead. I mean, like all the metrics, all the money raised, all the business there. I think you got to
So
be the best, whatever you
So
are.
I'm going to tag him now because I'm shouting out all the awesome people here in Seattle. So Josh Dirks was one. Another one is shout out to Dave Parker, who wrote the book called Traction. Actually, a very awesome book. And I'm going to steal his quote, which is he says, as an entrepreneur, always happy, never satisfied.
Yeah,
So
that's a good quote.
yeah, that's the mentality you should have, I think.
That's a good quote. And then somebody told me this before, right? I want to see what you think, right? So I went to the Bay Area one time to visit my niece. I just happened to meet a investor at some kind of event, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said, why do you think like San Francisco is so successful? Like people raising money, settle. He said, Jason, this is my theory. In the Bay Area, all the VCs like me are former startup founders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where in Seattle, all the investors are like Amazon, Boeing,
Employees.
they never started a company really, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said,
Mm-hmm.
take it further. If we're not going to see in the Bay Area, if someone makes it, suppose someone sells their stuff for $20 million, they reinvest it in the startup community. Where in
Mm-hmm.
Seattle, people like kind of take the money and run.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's what he thought. So he told me.
100% agree. Right. It's the environment, right? But then the question you're asking, well, okay, well, what about the environment makes it like such a great environment,
Mhm.
right? And it's really hard, right? Because it's the chicken and the egg.
Yeah.
You need more unicorns.
Yeah.
That's the easy answer, right? You want me to give the answer? You need more unicorns. Okay, well, what makes more unicorns, right?
Yeah.
More unicorns,
Yeah.
right? It's tough, right? Like winners produce winning. I think whatever like those ultra college schools, right? Those like NCAA, AA, like top 10, whatever the hell school. I'm not really big on in college sports, but shout out UW. But basically, I'm actually from Eastern. I should really say shout out Eastern, but whatever. But long story short, right? Like what makes the best schools
Yeah.
more, produce more wins, right? Like forget about that. What about the Patriots? What about
Yeah.
the Kansas City Chiefs? Let's talk about that. I know the NFL,
Yeah.
right? Like why do the Patriots keep winning? Well, because the winning culture works,
Yeah.
and then that attracts more talent, and then all of a sudden, free agents go, you know what?
I'll take less money.
Yeah, exactly.
I want this ring. I
Exactly.
want a legacy.
Why are the Warriors winning? Exactly.
Yeah,
So that's what happens.
I want to work for Tom Brady.
Yeah.
And I think that's culture. Like you probably know this. Like when the Patriots, like suppose they sign, suppose like a free agent draft him, like done draft, right? He come in,
Yeah.
and Tom like, hey, Bob Smith, I'm Tom Brady. Nice to meet you. And the guy like, I'm an undrafted rookie. How the fuck does Tom Brady know me, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Tom Brady took the time like learn everyone's name.
And I think we might have cracked the puzzle right there, right? Like, why do the Patriots win? Because Tom Brady. Because we need more Tom Bradys, right? We need more hardcore startup enthusiasts and success stories here in Seattle. And if we get those, right, then those people, right, will mentor the next community, right? And then the cycle will continue, right?
And then talking to the Chiefs, right? They're successful too, but people don't remember when Andy Reid's the coach of the Eagles, like they were like lose all the AFC championship games, lost the Super Bowl, never successful. He probably took those lessons learned to Kansas City and was able to actually start winning championships.
Yeah, I'd say he got to a certain level of success, right? It's the same thing with Tom Brady, right? It's like Tom Brady was a winner his whole career, right? Like in Michigan, right? They were debating his college coalition.
Yeah, like who are you? Like, you don't know if you're good enough to start.
Exactly, right? But what happened was, right, he got the lumps in, he got the experience, and then he was like, I'm going to go be elite, right? And then he got around the right environment, right? And basically, I guess that's the theme of the show today, but basically environment. But basically, right, he went in, and then now they're creating top tier culture, right? That's a huge part of it.
So you have a favorite NFL team?
I mean, you already know, bro. Seahawks. I mean,
Seahawks.
that's
Okay.
easy. I cried when I was like 13 years old and the Pittsburgh Steelers beat them and they cheated during that Super Bowl.
I mean, every fan knows that was a fucking like rip off. Like
Yeah,
those calls were so horrible.
that was crap. Yeah.
That was a crap.
You know what I thought would have been freaking awesome actually is if Russell Wilson would have came back to the Seahawks. That would have been like the ultimate heist, right? If you think about it, right? Like he leaves, he rips off Denver, and then he comes back and
I know, right? Oh man.
And he gets a team friendly deal
for the massive plan. I mean, because the Seahawks did rip the Broncos off.
Yeah. Well, we crushed it.
Do it.
That was genius. I'm excited for this year's season. And also, the irony is, like in 2013 when they won, I knew every single player on the team.
Nice.
Today, I don't even, Tavares Jackson is the quarterback, right? Or no, Geno Smith. See, that's exactly it, right?
Yeah.
Today, I can't like Geno Smith. Like I actually, Seneca Wallace actually used to be the backup quarterback when they went to
him.
He was actually my neighbor.
Remember
right?
Tavares Jackson?
Yeah. So Seneca Wallace is actually my neighbor for a brief period. He was the nicest guy. Long story short, I used to be able to name all those players, right? Now I don't keep track because I'm focused. I'm hyper focused, right? Yeah. Focused on business. I'm trying to be, like Tom Brady has that Kobe mentality. Yeah. I'm trying to cultivate that in myself. Mm-hmm. And that's sadly to say, right? That's the only way it's been winning for me. That's been working. I really wish I could be that. Oh, I'm going to do the 40-hour a week, entrepreneur, especially with the shit that I want to do. I don't want to just, because I already built $1 million company, I'm going to sound like a dick, but yeah, I did that already. Right. But it's not good enough, right? Like that because it's not like I'm pocketing $1 million. Yeah. Right. I'll pocket maybe 100K plus this year. Right. 150K plus. Right. And then reinvest, right? What I could, right? Like take the money, but that's not really the level I want to get to. Once you get to, I personally think if you want to pay yourself $1 million every year sustainably, get and not have like a really hardcore, job, you have to get to 8 figures, right? But even then, like I want to start startups. So what does that take? Like I want to start a startup. I want to be a serial entrepreneur. I want to be tycoon. Dude, there's no way around it, right? Like you got to like focus. I'm sure somebody's going to be the 2-hour work week serial entrepreneur tycoon. I can't do it. So yeah.
Yeah. So what's the last vacation you took?
The last vacation? Oh, that's easy. So every year now at this level, like I said, I don't even think I'm at the beginning level, but I tried to take a 2-week vacation.
Okay.
So it's not that bad. In fact, one of my favorite things about Steve Jobs, because I studied all these guys, right? Because I listened to all these audiobooks. Steve Jobs actually, every 3 months, he would actually take 2 weeks off. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty freaking great. But the other thing people don't think about is every year you get over 100 days off. Those are called weekends. Yeah. So you don't work as much as you fucking think you do. Yeah. Right? You're only working 5 out of 7 days a week. And you're trying to take more time off. It's like, bro, you're, like if like what, right? Like what's going on, right? So I actually I try to work on the weekends, right? Like today I'm doing this and then I'm going to go see my girlfriend. Then I might get a little bit more work done. Then tomorrow I'm going to wake up and that's like a great work day, right? Yeah. But the sleep and, all the other stuff plays a part into it. And I love what I do.
For me, it worked out some way where I work weekends, but I take off a half day Thursday, half day Friday. Somehow it worked out.
I have that every Wednesday. I have a half day. So every Wednesday I have a date day with my girlfriend. I'm giving away my whole freaking schedule now. But yeah, and then Saturdays I have date days and family days.
And people don't realize, like taking time during the week is so great because like you go to Costco, you can do stuff. There's no one there. I mean, there's people there, but not like it is now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so much better, right?
Yeah.
More time to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And do you go like vacation to the same place every time? Or how do you pick a vacation?
Oh no, I pick a country. So I as a thank you, right? Because I was bumming off my parents, right? I still am actually. I'm saving every penny because I plan to buy another $1 million company actually one day, right? Or just keep reinvesting. But basically, as a thank you to them and their support, I actually flew them out and I paid for all their expenses in Italy. And then this year, the plan, because this year was my birthday again, turned 33, is the plan was to fly them out, all paid trip for 2 weeks to Spain.
Okay.
And health got in the way of that, unfortunately.
And so do your parents say, this is why it was such hard to you as a young man, Vlad?
Yeah, they're proud. They're proud of me. They're proud of me. Like they'll tell me, my dad, like even today, they'll be like, you're working too hard. Yeah. But I was like, that's not the shit you told me when I was a kid. And it ingrained inside of me when I was young. Right. So now, even if they say, like, oh, Vlad, we're so proud of you. You made it already, whatever. I'm thinking, nah, you're tricking me. You're waiting for me to slow down. Right. And so then, and I did, like I said, I went to a facility and learned the lesson, but still it got ingrained in me at an early age. You've got to work. My dad would actually take us to the park and he'd train us. So he'd say, all right, time to push up time, right? And then he let us play though. He didn't punish us with exercise. He let us play too, but he would train us. And then they forced me to do karate. So I, as a kid, I did karate, basketball, and football actually all in the same week. I'd have like all these crazy practices, and I actually got Osgood Schlatters, so my knees, busted out. But I ended up, my parents would push me to a lot of, sports, which I loved. And I played in my community, I played basketball so long that you couldn't see the ball anymore with my friends and stuff. It was fun.
Let me ask you this, and you may have not have thought about this, right? So like, suppose you have a kid, right, son or daughter, right?
Hmm.
Is your mentality going to be to push them as hard as you were pushed, or are you going to be like, man, I'm not going to push them hard because like I'm like not having grades of assault, but like kind of take it easy on them, right?
It's so hard, Jason. That's such a hard question. One of my favorite movies of all time is Good Will Hunting. And the reason I bring that up is because that's what it's about, right? It's about this young kid. He's a genius, right? His name's, he's Will. He's the janitor that does like, I don't know if you've seen it, right? Have you seen it?
No.
Dude, watch Good Will Hunting. It's one of my favorite movies ever. And it's basically about how do you make this genius kid the best he can be. And one of the guys there is arguing, you push him as hard as you can, right? And the other guy's like, he's not you, damn it. So that's kind of the line, right? That Robin Williams says he's not. So everybody out there, one of my favorite movies, Count of Monte Cristo, which I love that movie, and Good Will Hunting. Good Will Hunting is probably one of my favorite for entrepreneurship because it talks about like how is this kid going to decide who he's going to be? What company are you going to start, right? In fact, I told one of my mentors who sold his company for 9 figures, and I can tell you who it is after the podcast. But basically, right, I told him he's like quote unquote vacationing right now, but he keeps checking on me, right? And like he used to be super busy. Like I reached out to him 2 months now. Like I can talk to him like every day for a week or whatever, right? Because I can tell he's like made for business. He's an entrepreneur, right? And the thing is with an entrepreneur, the other thing I told him, right, even though like he's 100 years ahead of me, is I said, listen, like you can't call yourself an entrepreneur if you're not doing it actively, right? That's like it's like being in high school, being a high school athlete, right? And like, oh yeah, I'm an athlete. I play varsity in high school. It's like, no, you're not, dude. You're 33.
Yeah.
You haven't played that shit in a while. So basically, I told him, I said, I said, are you an entrepreneur? He's like, yes, I am. I was like, exactly. I was like, remember that scene in Good Will Hunting where basically like him and his best friend, there's, and you can watch this movie, like I said, but they're sitting around a construction lot, right? And the guy's like, and he's basically tells his best friend, yeah, I'm going to be a construction worker with you my whole life. And his best friend actually, who really loves them, right, says, no, you're not. He says, it would be fucking insult to you and to me if you did this because you are not made for this. You're made on to do bigger and better things, right? Yeah. And so that's my whole thing as a parent to make it go around. What are my kids made for? To go on to better and better things. I think that's how you can be the best parent. Really understand the DNA of, the kids. And obviously they get to decide.
Okay. And I know obviously your people work for you, not your kids, right?
Yeah.
But like how you transfer that mentality and make sure the people with the potential perform the fullest potential.
What's funny is I forgot where this is from, right? So you guys can Google me and challenge me this after, but they did like a test and they found that the parts of the brain that light up when a parent looks at their children are the same parts of a brain that a boss or a CEO light up when they look at their employees, right? So it's like that same part of taking care of people, right? And that's a lot easier, obviously, right? Because right, I just look at how are they going to make me the most return on investment? But B, right, how are they going to get what they want? So one of the questions I asked for them is, hey, how much money do you want to make? Write that down. That was the first question. Good. Now, how are you going to do that in a sustainable way for the company as well? Right? And that's the challenge, right? People always want to get paid more money, right? And it's actually one of the laws of the business world. The laws of the business world is, right, your employees are always going to want to make more money. They're always want to do less work. Your clients are always want to get less, more, they're always going to want to pay less, right? They're always going to want to get more work for them. And then you're in the middle as the business owner trying to figure it out, right? Like one side wants to do less work, get paid more. The other side wants to, more in returns and get paid less. And you're like stuck, right? But I challenge the employees as well, right? And then for the clients, I try to create as much value as I can. So yeah, it's conversations.
So I just remember a meme and I want to know what you can do when this happens, right? So meme was like, if you're a kid, you'd ask for candy or something for breakfast. The parent says, no fucking way. No, eat your, whatever eggs. Grandkids, the grandparents make like chocolate chip cookies and chocolate cakes, ice cream for the grandkids, right? So how you react like your parents are like really super nice to your kids and you're like, oh, what's going on here?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I'm not a grandparent, right? But my parents are insanely like sweet to my sister's children. And they
like, what was this person at when I was growing up?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, what the hell is going on? And maybe it's because, who the hell knows? Maybe it's because psychologically, when you reach a certain age, you've only got a limited amount of time. So you're like, hey, like I can't focus on, pushing my kids and all that.
That's my kid's responsibility.
Yeah, like I'm just focused on enjoying. So I'm just going to focus on all the fun stuff. You want ice cream night? Let's get ice cream. It's okay.
Yeah.
Because it's like, just don't tell anybody, grandpa, it's okay. grandpa's here for you. And then it's just like, your job is maybe, or your hope is your grandchildren will have an amazing memory of you, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
love them so much.
I think that's a big thing. Yeah, 'cause I remember when I was a kid, I spent my first 5 years of life with my grandparents, right? And I go some of the time. One of my memories is like waking in the morning, like maybe 8 in the morning, walking to the post office, maybe 6 blocks away, and going from the post office, my grandmother, to the corner store, getting a bag of Starbucks and orange soda, and drinking like at 9 in the morning, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and still this day, I still have that memory, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, they obviously, they love their grandchildren
Yeah,
so much, and they understand the time. And obviously, there's families out there that are really cruel as well, and
yeah,
there's also families that are really hard, right? I'm just very fortunate, but
yeah,
sometimes grandparents can be mean and all that.
yeah. Unfortunately, so what would it take for someone to buy you out?
To buy the company out,
Yeah,
that's easy. So basically, they'd have to pay me more than what I think, is really, justifiable for
mhm,
the company in terms of my end goal,
mhm.
right? So it's what do we think? If you want me to give you a number, I
Yeah.
will, right? They have to give me probably around 8 figures for
Okay.
that. It's
So
hard.
you'll be open to it then.
Well, I would, because I think I could go on to do bigger and better
Yeah.
things, right? And then the the challenging part for that would be the team members, right? I'd
Yeah.
have to figure out a way to
Yeah.
make it sustainable for them as well,
Yeah.
right? And also the thing is with the agency, right? It's not built to be sold, right? In fact, one of my team members was like, Vlad, I know what your end goal is to sell. My end goal is not to sell, actually. I think going into the mentality of I'm building this to sell this is a bad mentality, because you have to attract sellers, right? If you're selling the company because you have to, right, or because you want to, that'll actually, I think, show in the work. I think you have to build a business where you're like, hey, I'm most likely never going to be able to sell this thing, right? And then you create the best mentality. So I've never really thought about that,
Yeah.
right? But today, right, like if you take a look at an agency on paper, right, like I'd be foolish not to, sell a company that is whatever doing 500,000 in profit, and then somebody says, well, I'm going to pay 10, right? So there's numbers that basically, if you take a look at the math, right, that's like, hey, look, you have to sell, right? You should. It's just like my team members, right? It's like if somebody comes to you and they say, hey, I'm going to give you triple the salary you're getting paid right now, right? Like, go get the better paying job, right? That's what the market dictates, right? I tell them the same thing. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened.
So what if I'll use HubSpot? What if HubSpot came to you, offer you that money, right? But they said you had to stay on as CEO for 3 years.
Oh shit. I don't think so. I don't think I'd be able to do that. See, that would be really tricky, right? Maybe I would. I don't know. It have to be like, it would have to be very clear circumstances. I've never personally had a job longer than 6 months, because I drive people batshit
Yeah.
crazy. Like, because I will ask you a million fucking questions and question every answer you give me, because I want to make sure we get to the best possible
Yeah.
answer. And some people hate that, right? Most people will hate that, right? And yeah, that's a whole thing. So, but I probably could do it. I could probably do a 3-year thing, right? I probably
Okay.
learn a lot. I probably learn a ton, right?
Yeah.
HubSpot or whatever,
Yeah.
Microsoft, all these companies. It's not like I'm a know-it-all,
Yeah.
right? So
Is
yeah.
there another type of business you want to start in the future? Like
Well, I'm
outside of
starting it
marketing?
right now inside my company, right? So it's not like we're starting a brand new company. So we have a marketing agency, right? We have 40 clients, but now we're basically a focused service lead gen provider for water, fire, damage companies, and we're focused for it. And we're creating a 5-star review service, right? We're playing ideas with kind of revolutionary kind of ideas, because no one is doing. And here's for you guys out there, right? AI is obviously really hot, right? Here's a big tip. If you have AI here and you have whatever you specialize in there, right? Just pick a segment in the middle, and then you'll be able to actually go ahead and create tons of value. For instance, for us, it's marketing, then it's AI, and then we pick an industry, which is fire, water, damage restoration. Nobody's doing that. You could use that formula, so that's the fun for me. And that's what we're doing. And that's why we're becoming a tech enabled service company.
Yeah. So you have a bachelor's in psychology,
Yep.
um, but no master's, right?
No, I want so my dad, the immigrant, you're gonna not be surprised by this answer. He said, Vladimir. So I always do this accent for my dad. He says, Vladimir, you can be anything you want, anything. So what do you want to be, lawyer, doctor? Anything. You have
Yeah.
so many options. Like, you're
Yeah.
giving me 2 options, bro.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what, dad? I'm gonna be a doctor,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna pick being a psychologist, because it was like one of the fun classes that I had. And and then maybe I'll be a psychiatrist, because I want to know, why do people do what they do in the
Yeah.
world. And this was around when I was 19 years old, and I was thinking, yeah, this entrepreneurship stuff's really cool, but I'm still kind of figuring it out. But then when I was 19, because I went to college 16, when I was 19, I was like, you know what? We have 300,000 downloads in the Android App Store. Like other 19-year-olds don't really have this. Other 19-year-olds aren't in college right now. Like everybody's trying to figure out what they're doing. I think I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to pursue business and I'm going to start a tech company. And that's when my fascination with technology, et cetera, started.
Hey, can you give any advice to like any 19-year-old people out there, like any young people out
Oh,
there?
easy. And this is for everybody. I think you should do this exercise. If you're trying to figure out a path in life, right? The first thing you should do is think of the word successful, right? Because every 19-year-old young person, or whatever, or even an old person wants to be successful. So go and make a list. And this is the first exercise I have everybody do. Make a list of anyone you think comes to mind when you think of the word successful. And then the second part of the exercise I tell them is go and circle the top 5 people from that list that you want to be like. And once they do that, right, then they can use these top 5 people as a proxy for their decisions. And I always tell people the people you think are successful, like I super admire Elon Musk, right? But do I really admire him? No, because I don't freaking know the guy. But I admire the image of Elon Musk. And so now I can write, okay, well, why does Vlad admire Elon Musk? What traits and elements does Vlad admire? And then that's how you can live a life that you admire. And that's the advice I give them.
So this off topic, right? But it's funny like how Elon Musk like draws so positive, negative things, right? A lot of people look up to him, a lot of people hate him because there's two doors down. There's a bar here called Central Saloon, right? They've been open since 1892. Nirvana, all these Nirvana play their Pro Jam, and they still have live music every night, right? So one time we were there with a friend that listened to live music, right? And this group of 4 people sat down, right? And they had business cards that said Elon Musk drinks piss.
Maybe he does. Who knows?
I'm like, I'm just talking about myself, man. Like, how in a sense, like, you know nothing about this man. He's just
yeah,
a world.
yeah. You can't judge him.
Yeah, I thought it was funny as shit, right? Like,
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's hilarious, right? Who knows, right? Maybe everybody drinks piss. I think I really admire the guy, right?
Yeah,
because
I
of
do
what
too,
he's
yeah.
accomplished,
the
right?
stuff he's trying to do, the stuff hopefully he does, you know.
Yeah, I think he's fucking awesome, right? So and same thing, go look at Biden and Trump, right? Like you can't really you don't really know these people,
No.
right? Like you know the media and you know what you've read online,
Yeah.
and then you know kind of your own values, right? So it's really tough, I'm like a hardcore, and this is kind of going to be my kind of, political views or whatever, right? Like, but I'm just hardcore on making sure that your views are what you want.
Yeah.
And that's what matters, right? Like the rest, whatever, right? Like I don't really know you. You don't really know me, right? Even, one of my good friends, Hike Delavision, shout out to him, best insurance guy here in Washington. I'm gonna tag him in the post. But basically, one of his favorite quotes that he told me is, Vlad, most people don't even know themselves.
Yeah, they don't know.
So, that's the thing, right? If you don't really know yourself, how can you judge somebody else?
Yeah. You're right, because like, like on TV, it's like President Biden is like mentally incapacitated. He's like kind of, not all there.
Yeah, I've seen some clips. Yeah.
But I had a good friend who went to like the White House for some kind of recognition. And he's like, man, I talked to President Biden. He's the most engaging, mentally person I met in my life.
Yeah.
Now, of course, this guy's kind of Democrat, but might be kind of biased, And then like with President Trump, he's like, no, black people not so like him, right? He went to a Chick-fil-A in Atlanta, and like all the black people like, we're for you, right? So like, what's true, right? You don't know.
You don't know. You don't know the person. You don't really know unless you're like inside. You don't really know the person. These are all kind of actors, right? Like Hollywood, right? And that's the problem, right?
And then I think our news agencies are failing us, right? CNN, Fox, they're like how you know what's real, what's true.
That's actually a great question. I would say this, right? If you want to learn what's real and how the American political system really is, and I'm, like I said, I'm not really political, but one of my teachers said this in college and it really stuck with me. Go and read about what other countries write about your country, because that's most likely what the truth is.
Oh man.
Right? Because in here, obviously, we've got the media is obviously controlled by the government and all that shit, right? Every single country has that. We're probably least controlled because thankfully we have the freedom of speech, right? But go and see, if you're like a Chinese citizen, right? And you want to know, well, what the hell is China really like? Go view it from the lens of American news, right? And then vice versa.
Vietnam news, or
yeah, and you'll find out every freaking country's crappy and all that kind of stuff. It's like a mix.
And you think about it, every government has like corruption, idiots running it. Like there's no such thing as expert or something, right?
Yeah. It's never ending, and they're always moving really slowly, which is going back to AI, right? Like that's the thing that probably makes me the most nervous of AI is when you said, well, how's AI going to end? It's the question is, well, how well can all of us regulate AI? And I encourage everybody out there to really, go and lobby and all that kind of stuff in terms of AI and making sure that you support the best AI standards, right?
Here's a deep question for you, right? So do you ever listen to the Lex Friedman podcast?
I love the Lux Junior
So
podcast.
I
Yeah.
hit an episode with this nuclear expert on the right. I didn't know this. So like, pose a country launches a nuclear weapon on us, right?
Hmm.
The president has 6 minutes to decide if it's fake, if it's real. He basically has 6 minutes to decide if am I going to relaunch, right? And of course, although the lady, of course, the military people launch the president, but if it's a mistake, the whole world ends, right? So in that moment, the 6 minutes start. Do you want like President John Brown, a human, or do you want President AI?
Well, the easy answer is, it's a cop out answer is both,
Mm-hmm.
right? You want AI and the president.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had to pick today, it's over time. Today, the best answer I think would be humans, because I trust humans more, right?
Yeah.
But eventually, it's going to be AI is
Yeah.
easily the best answer, because my dad actually talked about this, and he was like, I don't know how well, like, AI is going to be at driving cars. I was like, no, AI is going to crush humans at driving cars.
Oh yeah, easily.
AI is going to crush humans at everything, right?
Yeah.
Chess, all that stuff. So eventually, AI is going to be the best. You know.
Yeah. So you already talked about your company some. Can you go more detail, like how you got started, what you focus on now, and your future vision?
Yeah. So the way I got started was, we actually, after our last company, Skyreal, we didn't know, we had the pain of, man, we did not know how to get traction. How the hell do you get this thing called clients? How do you grow a business? So we noticed a lot of our friends, what I would do is I would use the James Altucher methodology from his podcast, which is basically you go through and you actually pitch people 10 questions of how you can add value. And then one of my people in my circle, right, they're like, oh, I like all these ideas, and then the idea is you pitch them all these ideas and then you help them work with them, right? So that's kind of a methodology people can do to kind of get business and value. So I did that with my network, and then one of them wanted help with marketing, and we've done marketing campaigns for ourselves. So I was like, I can definitely do this. We did it for like a car dealership one time, and I said, hey, maybe there's something here. Let me close him. So I closed him. I met another guy, right, named Dave. Dave became a mentor, right? Took us under his wings. He calls us boys. And long story short, right, we ended up, getting a referral from Dave, and then we ended up growing the community of referral partners, and then Logic Inbound became what it is today, right? For the last 8 years, we did like 200K the first year. Then the next year we did like 400, then like 600. Then COVID hit, right? And then that really crushed us. And then 2021, that's when we did like 1 million, 1.6. And then last year we did 1.2, but we really focused on profit and being like a sustainable company. And then this year I'm back on growth. So yeah, that's kind of our kind of story. And then my future vision for the company is, we're specializing in fire, water damage restoration. So I want to build the coolest marketing AI tech tools in the space to make it much easier for our clients to, get clients for themselves and be able to deliver high value.
So earlier you talked about metrics, KPIs. What KPIs and metrics do you focus on for your company?
Oh, that's a great question, because I was just talking about it to my mentor, right? For my company personally, right, we look at profit, we look at net profit, and then we look at company lifetime value of client lifetime value, right? So those are kind of like the top three. And then we have like a list of sub metrics. And one of the things that teachers do at Goldman Sachs actually is, they, just like when you're driving a car, you got the fuel pump, you got this, speedometer, all that kind of stuff, right? Oil gauge. They teach you to actually create that for your own business. So every business out there right now, it's actually a hot tip from Goldman Sachs. Every business owner actually should go create a list of what are the top 6 to 10, whatever metrics, and then whittle it down to like, 3 to 6. And then you use those to measure your company weekly.
Do you have any personal metrics for yourself, KPIs for yourself that you'd use?
So for myself, to measure myself as success, I look at net profit, I look at revenue, right? And then I
I mean,
look
as
at,
far as like not the business wise, as far as personal wise, maybe health wise.
oh yeah. Okay. This is one of my favorite things in life. So I actually do something called the Health Wealth Relationship Journal, and then I have something called HB Habits. This is actually what I do. This is I think really awesome. People should do it, but I do it. It works great for me. It's my life philosophy is health, wealth, relationships. And so every morning I'll get up. I have a journal in the top left. I'll type health, wealth, relationships, HWR, and then I'll write HB. HB is the ultimate habit I'm building. So, and then what I do is whenever, I tell myself, hey, do something you're proud of. So like the first thing I'll write number one, like the first thing I'm doing. It's not a to-do list, by the way, because it's something I write down before I'm going to do it. So I'm building the skill of writing something down and then immediately doing it. That's the skill and the habit I'm constantly working on. And I've been doing this for the last year and a half now, 2 years, and I'm so excited about it. So basically I say, okay, number one, journal. So I wrote number one, journal. Then I basically create the journal things. Then I go number two, and then I'll say, do your morning routine. And so my mentee was like, wait a minute. So you're saying if I have to tie my shoes, I should write tie my shoes in there? I'm like, no. You should only write what you're proud of. And if you do this, then you'll get into a great habit of writing something down before you do it. And then guess what? Doing the next task is as easy as writing it down.
And you said you meditate. Do you have like a meditating app you'd use, or what do you use to meditate?
So, I recommend the book. I recommend the book by Amishi Jha. Um, oh man, she has a meditation book out there, right? And so basically, in that book, she goes over mindfulness meditation techniques, right? And it's now Peak Mind by Amishi Jha. That's the book's name, right? And so basically, I mean, ironic, right? I can't remember the book. It's called Peak Mind, but basically, I think it's called Peak Mind by Amishi Jha, and she talks about meditation techniques, right? And yeah, so I use these kind of conscious meditation techniques. It's really just breathing techniques, and I'll close my eyes. It's really to relax. Is meditation needed for success in life or business? No, right? But I think it's an ROI activity, just like stretching, just like going and getting a haircut instead of once every quarter, getting it every other month or once every 2 weeks. Like there's just certain things that give you a little edge.
So entrepreneur, the highs are high, the lows are lows. And unfortunately,
Mhm.
they might be in the same hour.
Mhm.
How do you like keep an even kill balance?
It's easy. Three things, right? First of all, right, is mentoring people is actually highly recommended because it'll show you that life is not just fucking about you. You'll talk to your mentee and Vlad, this horrible thing happened. Vlad, like I told you, he's like, if I don't do 1 million this year, I'm going to jump off a cliff. Right. And he's like, man, this kid's 20, but it's like, man, he's having a hard time focusing. She's actually wondering where the hell she's going to make her next dollar from. Man, these guys are also facing challenges. It's also hard. It's for everybody. I'm not alone. Right. So the stress for me comes from, not, being alone. Right. And then the other thing is, an abundance mentality, your friends and support network, your mentors, sleep. Right. And that's my, recipe for not being stressed out in business. Yeah.
So Vlad, is there anything else that I asked you that I haven't asked you yet, or anything else you want to talk about?
No, man, I'm an open book, but I think we're good.
Okay. Trying to think what else. So we're talking about who your mentors are, marketing. You're starting your company. Yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah, we talked about health, wealth, relationships, right? My life philosophy is health, wealth, relationships, right? So we focus, and I told this to my girlfriend actually as well. I said, I think anyone who puts the effort in can be in the top quote unquote 10% of health, top 10% of wealth, top 10% of relationships in their life. So one thing I actually also do, a habit I built up in for relationship piece, because we talked about health, right, which is fairly easy, right? Is like I put the gum by the door, right? And I do that, right? We talked about wealth a lot, actually, right? In terms of relationships, I actually made it a habit, and I'm going to start this habit again because I built up such a huge network. Every day, I reach out to one seven-figure entrepreneur, seven-figure plus,
like
by the way.
cold email, cold call, or some of your
All the above, all the above. So basically, and then so for my journaling system, if I exercise that day and I logged all my calories, I'll give myself a 10, right? For my health, so that's for my health, right? For my wealth, I need to do something in terms of finances, like either it's research or definitely check the bank, and then I need to teach myself a useful skill. That's for wealth, right? That's on top of all the business shit I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then for relationships, I need to reach out to somebody that's actually seven-figure plus in business that I want to be like, or like sometimes I'll say, hey, somebody that's going to help me in this different area of my life.
Yeah.
So those are the habits I build there. And then the last thing is HB. I write habit. I have to do at least 10 to 15 different things that I'm proud of that I wrote down.
So you're doing that, and of course, people. I don't hate to use all the people below you, but people below you reach out to you, like people want to get mentored and stuff. Obviously, you can't help everyone, right? So how do you decide? Like, suppose you get 10 emails tomorrow, like Vlad, I'm blah blah, I'm this, that. How do you decide which one is like actually like mentor, reach out to, or like all that kind of
That's
stuff?
easy. That's easy. So I have this mentee. I mentor him for like 30 minutes to an hour once a week. And then the next mentee, I mentor him once every 2 weeks. And then this gal, we'll see if she reaches out, right? She'll be once a month, right? So basically what I do is whenever another person reaches out to me about mentoring, I just spread it out. So it goes once a week, once every other week, once a month. The next person that reaches out to me, I'll say, hey, I'm fairly busy. I can talk, but then you will have to reach out to me like 2 months later. And then it'll be like 4 months or whatever, right? And that's kind of like my mentoring thing. And I'll probably cap out at maybe 5 or 6 mentees, right? And that's for mentoring directly. And then look, people can always DM me. They can always cold email me. It's not like I'm like a celebrity or something, right?
And so here's the one for you, like for your mentors that you mentor you, right? When do you decide, okay, I just kind of sound wrong, but when do you decide, okay, I've got all I can from this mentor, I need to cut them off, and then when you have a mentee, like, man, I think I provide all value I can do this mentee. It's time for me to tell her to find another mentor.
That's a beautiful question. So for mentoring and mentees, right? Instead of saying, oh, I'm just going to cut them off, screw you, right? You're never going to do that, right? I had my first mentor actually worth 8 figures. He was phenomenal, but we actually kind of had a falling out. And what I did was I did the wrong thing. I just kind of like cut it off. I shouldn't have done that. Just keep in touch with people, right? The people that provide value in your life, right? And then sometimes in life, right? Your childhood friends, Timmy from middle school, you're not keeping in touch with them anymore. You don't have anything in common. So what happens is, right? Like slowly you drift apart. But so it's basically how active are the communication channels, right? And so that's how you should choose, for mentoring, for mentees and all of that. And ideally, I think you're a successful mentor. This is just me. I'm very strict when your mentee actually has reached your level or go beyond it, goes beyond it. There's another book called Do More Faster by Techstars. And they talk about how ideally you should, share as much knowledge as you can so somebody can get to your level and then you can have a mastermind partner, which is super valuable.
Are you reading a book right now?
Yes.
What book is that?
It's called Our Next Reality. It's an AI book. And it's talking about our next reality and how AI is gonna,
And you like read a book a week, book a month, or
I listen to one audiobook a week.
Okay.
And every Monday, me and my partner, we mastermind about it. And he has to do his book. I have to do my book. And we'll talk about like for 5 minutes, we'll talk about like, here are the things that, like I remember from the book, just for memory. It's actually for yourself because I've read a couple of memory books, right? So if you recall things, right, active recall will help you. The more we recall things, the better your memory will be, especially if you space them out. So I space the book out. I'll listen to maybe 10, 20 minutes a day, right? And then also my other goal is I try to take at least 3 to 4 notes about what I just listened to per chapter. And then it's an audiobook. Anybody can do it.
Yeah. And how do you pick these books?
My mentor. Because
the
first thing I did was I actually started doing research, but then one day I was like, holy shit, wait, my mentor, he's actually listens to 2 to 3 audiobooks a week. And he doesn't take notes like me, but he just goes through them and he'll send them to me. So I'll ask him, then friends, then a certain book, like for instance, great book, Charlie's Almanac by Charlie Munger, right? At the end of that book, he has like 50 other books. So there's definitely never a shortage of great books out there.
And these books you read are always like business related. Do you ever read a book just like for the fun of it, like a fantasy book or
yes.
like superhero book, whatever?
Yes. But very rarely, a lot less. That's like 10% of the time. But what I started doing was there's like this book called Hatchet. It's like a children's book it's about this kid surviving in the forest. It's a fiction novel, right? And he's like, his like airplane crashed. He has nothing but him and a fucking hatchet and he has to survive. But that's the coolest thing, right? Because I never learned from fiction books actually until this year. I thought it was a waste of time. My recommendation for you guys out there, ask, hey, what's the one thing that if I solved it would make everything else easier or unnecessary? Then who are people that can help me solve that? What's a book I can read on that topic? What are some actions I need to take to increase and decrease probability? What are all my options? And go do that, right? So that's my kind of like advice for people, right? And so that's how I'd pick the book, right? But if you're trying to relax, but you're still trying to learn, go pick a fun little fiction book. And then, but in this book, Hatchet, like I'm not starting to love these survival books because in the business world, guess what? It's just you in the fucking forest and a hatchet.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, I'm learning these things in the book and I'm like, yeah, this is like, I see you always see yourself in the characters.
Yeah.
It's like the character was like, a bear attacked him. And I was like, oh, that reminded me of layoffs. Right. And he was like, oh man, that was hard. I almost didn't survive that, but I did. So then he's like, I have to remember to always pay attention to the forest. I was like, yeah, that's in business, right? You got to pay attention to your environment. So it's like these things, but that kind of helps me go to sleep.
So here's another like kind of deep personal question. So like you're getting married pretty soon. You're going to have kids,
Well, it's not been officially decided, but me and my girlfriend actually love her a lot. We both say there's a high chance of marriage.
Okay, high chance of marriage. More likely than not. Right?
We both say that.
I'll let you mess it up.
Yeah.
And hopefully you have kids. What do you do? Like, let's suppose you have kids now, right? They're 3, 4 years old.
Yes.
What would you do on a daily basis to make sure, hey, my kids get old enough to read about me, they're gonna be proud of me?
What would I do on a daily basis to make sure they're proud of my children are proud of me?
Yeah.
I mean, that's I personally wouldn't care too much about my children being proud of me, right? I would care about how do I make my children as successful as possible in their own right. I think they're going to be proud of me because they can see my character.
Okay.
Right. Like, they're going to see that I'm going to teach them the character is really what matters. Ideally it's really easy to say this shit, right? Yeah. It's really easy to say, hey, building a ton of money doesn't matter. Like it's bullshit.
Isn't it crazy when people say that they're always rich?
Yeah.
Money doesn't matter. You got $10 million. Of course it doesn't matter to you.
Of course. Exactly. So money does, all of these things matter. And the most important thing is character, because, if you raise a son who's super rich, but they're an asshole and, they become a tyrant, right? Like, I think it's just going to make the world a worse place. So there's something that Warren Buffett uses to hire people, right? He looks for three things. He looks for integrity, he looks for intelligence, and he looks for energy, right? So energy and intelligence, integrity. And so it's like if you and one thing he says, right? Like if the person doesn't have integrity, you don't want them to have any intelligence or energy, right? Like
Yeah.
you wish they're
That's pretty smart.
yeah. So basically, but that's what I'd look, in my kids, I'd look to try to help them be the best version of themselves. And I think your kids are going to love you if you love them. It's reciprocal.
Yeah.
It's kind of hardwired.
So what's your advice for social media? Like, you talk about the one channel approach. Like, I mean, of course, I think if you're B2B, you need to be on LinkedIn. Like,
Sure.
is this depends what your business is?
Yeah,
It depends
100%.
what your social media focus should
Of
be.
course. Yeah. I mean, the answer, it's like, it's like if I was an athlete, right? And you were like, hey, what do you think a workout routine should be? The answer is always, it depends, right? It's, for your workout routine, all that stuff. But however, right, there's still good principles. I say study the principles and know how they apply. It's the nuances. You get paid in the nuances, right? You don't get paid knowing the kind of like whatever the fluff is,
Yeah.
right? So study the principles and then be able to create the nuances from it. That's how you get paid in business and life and all that, right? But in terms of social media in general, right? Obviously, you want to have a schedule. You want to create, and here's my hack, right? Is in terms of network, right? Is you can create a mastermind group around that, right? Like if you're trying to be the best at Twitter, create the Twitter mastermind group. Like I'm learning cold calling. I have something I call the Outbound Ninjas. Every other Thursday, me and two guys, we meet at a coffee shop and we talk outbound. And we're all in the same position. We're all either like one of them starting to start an agency. The other one's, he has an agency. I have an agency, right? So go start a mastermind group around that thing. Like I've been able to create these principles, right? To get whatever the fuck I want done, right? So yeah, for social media, right? On LinkedIn, like here's an easy hack, right? If you're trying to get more referral partners, go and add them on LinkedIn. You can use tools like LinkedIn Helper out there, right? It'll add them. And if basically they add you, then go and get their contact information, hit them up, message them on LinkedIn. I'm a huge fan of multi-channel marketing, right? Or omni-channel marketing, where basically you stock whoever you want, right? And I don't like to go for a mass audience. I like to go, because in B2B, I like to go for like one person. I try to like really hit them up on all channels. At the same time, if you want to be like a leader, that's when you have to learn, YouTube SEO. That's when you have to learn postings, and there's courses and all that stuff out there for it.
So is SEO different for all these channels? Like SEO is different from YouTube?
Yeah.
Twitter?
Yeah, they are, right? And I haven't mastered all the channels, by the way, right? But like I'm best at Google, right? But also for YouTube, we have done YouTube SEO before, right? Like that's different than Amazon. Like Amazon, for instance, is you have to actually be very descriptive. It's almost like the old school Google where you have to like keyword stuff and write all the keywords in there, right? Because they don't have like a super sophisticated algorithm, right? YouTube watch time is a big factor, right? So you have to understand the factors, the nuances, right, of what make it successful for the channel, right? In Twitter, I actually just got Tim Ferriss. He actually just retweeted. Maybe I'll tag him again for you, right, for this post. He actually retweeted me, and because I had one post. This is actually March 30th. This actually happened a couple weeks ago. So basically, Tim Ferriss actually retweeted one of my tweets because I said, "Hey, check out this Tim Ferriss podcast," and I had 25,000 views on one podcast. Okay. Sorry, on one tweet, right? So it's like you can use different little strategies, like tagging different people, right? Creating consistent content, being smart about it. Like I think you'll be able to build a following.
Yeah. Can you share your social media links so people can reach out to you?
Yes, it's Vlad Gives, VLADGIVES at Twitter, LinkedIn. You should also type in my name, Vlad Mkrtumyan. People ask me, how do you spell your last name? Or also, how do you say your last name? I always tell them I'm still trying to figure it out myself. So, but yeah, you can type in my name on Twitter, LinkedIn. My email address is vlad@logicinbound.com. The key is you need to tell me where you found me from. Otherwise, I get a ton of spam, a ton of, I've never had this happen before. A guy, last week, literally last week, he said, "Hey, who at your company makes water purchasing decisions?"
I've gotten so many crazy emails recently.
No, he cold called me. He's like, "Who in your company makes water purchasing decisions?" I was like, "We're virtual." I was like, "But I'll ask my team what flavors they like." I was like, "It's so funny." Because, I've been trying to pitch and sold everything. So, yeah. And then the other thing I will say is for email or reaching out directly, right? Use some personalization. Make at least the first 2 to 3 sentences personalized. You can do that with AI, which is really shitty, right? Because now people are going to do that. You know what's going to happen, by the way, in like 5 years, Jason? People are going to reach out to you. They're going to be like, "Hey, Jason, I know that you've been at Walmart recently because I saw your last post on Twitter and I've been a big fan for 5 years. By the way, I read your book," right? And then they're going to say, "Anyways, my name is Vlad," and they're going to go into the pitch. And you're like, "Holy crap, this person did research and they did no research. AI did all of it." But today, right, you can use personalized outreach.
Yeah. Here's a good question for you. Of course, you need personalized, right?
Mm-hmm.
But suppose, like, yeah, I'm making this up. Suppose you have a lead list of 100 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it takes time to personalize it, right?
100%.
So of course, everyone says personalize it, take the time, but man, but it's like, is it really worth it?
It is and it isn't, right? Here's the thing. I'm actually doing this right now. I just flew back from Chattanooga, right? I have a list of 70 people, right? The first thing you've got to do is not personalize. The first thing you got to do is prioritize. Prioritize it, right? Once you prioritize it, now you know where to spend your time personalizing things, right? And then maybe you can chunk it out. You got 100, right? You could do the top 25 where you spend 5 minutes, right? The next 25, maybe you spend 2 minutes, right? And then less and less. The next is maybe a minute. And then the last one is you don't even care. You just, blast them.
Yeah.
So prioritize it. And then
Okay.
that's how you can figure it out.
Okay. Here's a question for you. You've dealt with a lot of startup founders, some successful, some of
Mm-hmm.
course some failed.
Mm-hmm.
When should a startup founder or small business owner go from, like, MVP, product market fit, to like scaling, so to speak?
I mean, hey, man, if you can print money, print all the money you can, right? But the one thing I do differently today than when I did is I actually am almost anti building an MVP. I think the best thing you could do is build like a slide deck, right? And obviously it depends, right? As always, but I build like a slide deck and I try to pitch as many people as I can, right? And see, can you get prepayments for that thing? And then based on that, and that's if you're starting from scratch, right? Or if you want, right? If you have a customer base, right? If you have the community, we talked about in the beginning, the community, if you have that community, then you can go to the community and tell them about what you're building.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's a huge key for validating your idea. And then product market fit, this is from Y Combinator. You have product market fit when you can basically when you can barely keep up with anything,
Yeah.
right? Like when it's like you feel like, man, this train is going so fast, it might fall off the rails. Like that's product market fit, where people are just clamoring for you, right? Most of the time, people don't have product market fit.
They think they do, they don't.
And that's when you scale, yeah.
Okay. Can you give us any last minute advice on anything you want to talk about?
I would just, do what I said in the beginning, right? Which is whatever you want to do, you have some very useful resources. You can, use the techniques I talked about in this podcast episode to create a mastermind group around what you're doing. You can read a couple books on the topic. You can create a list of all your options, right? Get your peers involved to give you feedback, and that'll give you leverage to get whatever the hell you need done. So that's what I'd recommend people do for their personal business life, whatever they need.
Vlad, thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you, man.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. Remember to be great every day.